Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Greek gods read Naruto Konoha. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Shadow Gods of the Fallen and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. It was the time of the winter solstice and all the gods were gathered and it was the same argument they all had been arguing for who knows how long. Suddenly a group of people materialized in front of the gods. They were Percy, Annabeth, Thalia, Nico, and Grover. Zeus as usual demanded in a booming voice, "What are your demigods doing here and who are you?" The demigods and Satyr were confused. "Didn't you summon us, Lord Zeus?" asked Annabeth. Just as Zeus was about to reply, three old women appeared in front of everyone and they all recognized who the three were. They were the Fates and whenever they appeared either a death or something important would happen. FAT number 1 spoke first. "We called them, they are from several years in the future to read these book series, however you won't be reading about strictly your adventures, but with another in your group." FAT number 2 spoke next. "You will be reading an interdimensional crossover version of the future, well the book will be reading itself and for certain events, there will be a projection of what is happening." Finally FAT number 3 finished up a three-part talk. "What none of you know is that there are millions of different dimensions and more are created every day and quite often many dimensions intersect and create a whole new dimension." Naturally everyone even Athena and Annabeth were shocked at hearing what the Fates just said. To hear that they have different versions of themselves and possibly several thousand versions at that would shock anybody. Also to hear that there are dimensions that they don't even know existed was a little disheartening, especially for the gods. Percy was able to summon up his courage to ask why they were being told to read these books if it wasn't about their dimension. It was FAT number 3 who answered, "This is because of something you once asked Chiron Perseus Jackson, you had asked what good one hero can do. Now you will be getting a real answer to that question." FAT number 1 stepped forward to continue, "What you are about to read is a crossover with the shinobi world. Now there is something that we need to tell you about how they fight. In their world they fight with abilities called jutsu, which have several categories such as ninjutsu, taijutsu, and jinjutsu. We will now be telling you what they involve. You will find out when you read, however you will be given some history knowledge." But that as the Fates left the basics from the Biduous to ranks began to run through the minds of all those present. It took 20 minutes, but they were able to sort everything and they were astounded. Now it was time to read. "So let's do this," Percy said. So while the demigod sat down on an elongated couch that facing the gods, it was going to the right: Percy, Annabeth, Thalia, Nico, finally Grover. Now the book shimmered and said out loud the title, Naruto Prince of the Underworld. The title of the book definitely raised eyebrows, but found themselves unable to say anything about it, but definitely thought that it was about another son of Hades. Chapter 1: A Whole New World. Two teenage boys were facing off in a place called the Valley of the End. This place was the final battle site of the first Hokage, the founder of Konoha, and Madara Uchiha, leader of the Uchiha clan. The two boys were Naruto Uzumaki, who was in his one-tailed form, and Sasuke Uchiha, who was in his Curse Seal level 2 form. Both boys were using malevolent powers, but for a purpose. "Wait, what kind of power?" shouted everyone. Sasuke Uchiha was using his power to gain a greater power and finally avenge his family by killing his older brother, Itachi Uchiha. That one man, in one night, literally obliterated the clan. Everyone's eyes widened at the fact that this boy's older brother had murdered his clan. He was going to kill Naruto to gain the ultimate power of his clan's power. The Mangekyo Sharingan. To gain the twisted power of the Sharingan, one has to lose something very precious to them. Okay, now everyone thought that both brothers were completely sick. Naruto, however, was using the dark power sealed within him to bring back his best friend to the village, back to Sakura Haruno. She was the girl he loved, but she loved Sasuke for some reason. He would bring back the last Uchiha for her. He would even use Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox, the bane of his existence, to bring him back. What the hell? For you see, Naruto was supposed to be seen as a hero for keeping the evil fox at bay, but he is seen as the Kyuubi itself, and so, he is hated by all but the younger generation. Naruto saw Sasuke as his brother because while he was at the bottom of the ninja class and an orphan, Sasuke was at the top and the Uchiha was the first person of the younger generation to accept him. So, he would bring him back no matter what. "I am not going back, Naruto. That place is only holding me back. I need to get enough power to beat him," Sasuke said as he flapped his giant hand like wings while activating his best jutsu, the Chidori, a weaker version of the lightning blade. It was also black because of the evil chakra he was using. "He really sounds disgusting," cried Aphrodite. For once everyone agreed, two hand-like wings out of the back is disgusting. It wasn't the having wings that was disgusting, but these wings were hand-like. "I will take you back no matter what, even if I got to break every bone in your body," Naruto yelled as the tail of the fox cloak swished behind him. He brought his hand to the side and a ball of energy swirled onto it. The Rasengan, normally blue thanks to human chakra, was now purple because of the mixing of human and demonic energies. The two were at the bottom of a waterfall that had the statues of the two who once battled here. Sasuke was at Madara's feet while Naruto was the first Hokage's feet. With an unspoken word, the two flung into the air at each other, their attacks colliding. The demigods were a little anxious for Naruto. They could tell that Naruto had to hold back if he was to bring the Sasuke back to their home and their world. That would put him at a disadvantage against someone trying to kill. Todori. Rasengan. The energies combined around the two 13-year-old boys, creating a large sphere of purple energy around them. Then there was a flash of light, as if there was an explosion of pure power, and now Naruto was knocked out on the ground, while Sasuke was standing above the boy. "I am still better than you," Sasuke said as he walked away in the nearby forest. He would not kill Naruto, because then he would be just like Itachi. That was a matter of opinion to the demigods. However, something didn't feel right to Athena and Annabeth. They were wondering why did Itachi kill his clan. For some reason they both could tell there was something bigger in play. A few minutes, the rain began to pour down, the seal that held the evil Kyuubi glowed brightly through Naruto's clothes on his stomach. Then in another flash of light, the one who sealed that terrible beast inside Naruto appeared next to the blonde-haired ninja, the fourth Hokage himself. The two looked almost alike, except for the whisker marks on Naruto's cheeks. The fourth looked at Naruto sadly and said, "I'm sorry my son, I should have never sealed Kyuubi into you. I should have just let the village be destroyed by the beast." The fourth Hokage then got down to his knees and put a hand on Naruto's seal, and slowly a ball of crimson red energy with the seal surrounding it came out. "It is time I take you to your true home," he said after he pocketed the ball of energy and held up Naruto's unconscious body, bridal style. That is when Kakashi, Naruto's sensei and the fourth's old student, came on the scene. The Jonin's lone eye widened to that of a dish plate. "Sensei. Minato sensei. Oh hello Kakashi," Minato said as he leveled a glare at the one-eyed man. "Sorry to say but I am not truly here. When I sealed the Kyuubi into Naruto, I sealed part of my soul as well. Oh, and just so you know, I saw everything." This one statement made the Jonin pale and start sweating. "For some reason I don't like where this is going," said Hades in his mind as he had figured out that this Naruto was his son and because of how he was reacting, it could mean that his son had not had a very pleasant childhood. "I saw how the villagers ignored Naruto when he was just a child, they overpriced everything he bought, the academy held him back not for being stupid." "What?" yelled everyone, Athena who was very repulsed at a school doing their very best to hold back children from gaining all the knowledge they could, while the demigods were furious that one of their own was the target of an entire village, and for Hades, you could literally see his eyes alight. They caused that, but because of the fact that they hated Naruto. No one gave him a chance and when he got onto your team, you turned your back on him and the girl to train only the Uchiha. That made the demigods even more angry than before, to only train one student and just forget about the rest of a teacher's students was repulsive, even if there were demigods that were more powerful that others each got equal training time. "You're just like the villager." At least the third Hokage helped him when he could without that damn council interfering. That saying, those who don't follow the rules are trash, but those who don't help their comrades are worse than trash, does not apply to you. You are such a hypocrite and a failure in my eyes. Minato growled out as he walked to a black portal. "I hope you are proud of yourself." "Sensei wait," came the shaky voice of Kakashi. "Are you going to say sorry?" "Don't bother it won't change a thing," Minato said as he adjusted his hold on Naruto and brought a hand into the air. "Come." There was a pulse in the air and 8 orbs came and spun around his hand. "This world has seen enough of the tailed beasts, it is time for the power of the Kraken to leave this world. And this way, the other demon containers would not die, Naruto would hate me if I killed the Gar kid." But the blonde duo disappeared into the darkness, never to be seen again in this world. The demigods and Hades sighed because they were happy that Naruto was away from that world. Kakashi fell to his knees, so lost that he never noticed the rain stop or how long he had been there. He slowly got back up and somberly walked back to the village. Lady Tsunade is not going to be happy. Sasuke, who was almost to Orochimaru, the man who promised him power, felt a burning sensation in his eyes and quickly went to a nearby puddle. The sight before him was the Mangekyo Sharingan. "And no, that means that," Sasuke said to himself, not being able to finish his sentence. He silently cried to himself as he walked to Orochimaru's hideout. XXX. Sakura, Lee, and a few others were freaking out. Gaara had just screamed out when a tan ball of energy flew out of him. But now it seemed that he was fine. Tamari was fussing over her little brother and when he said that he no longer heard the voice, she gave him a tearful hug. Though, one could not help but wonder what the hell just happened. The demigods could sympathize that they all had had plenty of what the hell experiences. Then a cry from the guards caught everyone's attention because they saw a figure in the distance. Taking a closer look, Tsunade saw that it was Kakashi. When the scarecrow-haired man finally made it to the gates, he fell to his knees with a broken and defeated look on his face. This did not bode well. "Kakashi-sensei, what happened?" Sakura hesitantly asked. "They are both gone." Sasuke left the battle site, leaving Naruto to die. "Only, what I got there." Naruto was unconscious but not alone. Kakashi droned out, giving the now present Jiraiya a sad look. "My sensei was there as well. He said that he saw everything and that he should have just let the village be destroyed by the Kyuubi. Then he called out to the tailed beasts and they obviously came and he took them and Naruto to the underworld, I would guess." Kakashi said while the younger generation gasped while Tsunade and Jiraiya looked away in shame. Sakura noticed this and asked. "Sensei, who was your sensei?" She asked with tears forming in her eyes over her lost teammates. Jiraiya was the one to answer her question. The fourth Hokage and Naruto's father. There was absolute silence at this statement. The ninja and the villagers who had arrived at the gates to welcome back the Uchiha all stared in shock at the toad sage before everyone let out a paniqued, "Why-eyed." That consumed the village. XXXX. The day after Naruto was taken from his world. The blonde was now in a bed. From the sounds outside the window, it seemed that it was very noisy out there. Slowly waking up, Naruto bolted up and looked around. This place was not his apartment in Konoha, nor was it a hospital room. Looking around him, he noticed a scroll addressed to him. "Dear Naruto. I am sorry for what I did to you all those years ago. Yes, I am the fourth Hokage, but I am also your father. My name is Minato Namikaze. I understand if you hate me but know that I will always love you. Now, I have taken you away from Konoha, even from the elemental countries. You are in a place called the United States, more specifically New York City, New York. Though I am dead as Minato Namikaze, I am still alive, but thanks to your uncle, I cannot be truly active in your life. Don't worry though, we will meet in time. When the time comes, I will be happy to see you. Now, since you are still young, you have to go to school in this world and I have enrolled you in Yancy Academy. In the seal at the bottom of the scroll, you will find all that you need in this world and that includes money. Also, there are some special jutsu that only you can learn since you are my son. Oh, just for a reference for the future, get a book on Greek mythology, you will need that info, trust me. Be careful my son. Minato." Naruto sighed as he looked out the window after reading the scroll. He had a lot to do in this new and strange world. Smirking, he created a shadow clone and got to work sorting out the stuff in the scroll. He did notice that his shadow clone came out differently. It literally formed from out of the shadows. And with that the book stopped and left all the Olympians and demigods a lot to think about. Zeus thought about the book and frowned a bit but quickly got over it and decided to ask the more important question is who were these demigods? Out of the whole group of demigods he only knew Thalia, his daughter. He decided it would be best to ignore her presence until he got enough courage to stand up to his would-be pissed-off wife if she knew, Hera. He used his master bolt to light up Olympus and shouted out, "Who are you demigods?" A stormy gray-eyed girl with honey blonde hair came forward that carried wisdom beyond her years. I knew she was a daughter of Athena because of her stormy gray eyes. She bowed then answered, Annabeth Chase, daughter of Athena. Next up was olive-skinned boy with black eyes and black hair but carried an aura of death. It got me into a frown because this boy was so familiar but I could not put my finger on it. He bowed then said, Nico di Angelo, son of Hades and Ghost King. I was furious was an understatement, how dare Hades break the oath we made after World War II. Hades? I roared while in my anger. Olympus was lighten up momentary. But after about 7 minutes I calmed down. I gave the approval for the next demigod introducing. Then a boy with green eyes and black hair came forward a little nervous but bowed. I answered in an angry voice what his name was and who his godly parent is. He said Perseus Jackson, but call me Percy, son of Poseidon. The son of Hades and Poseidon. I shouted angrily. I lifted up my master bolt but was held back by shadows and water. I looked at Poseidon which got me a glare from the said fathers. Then my daughter came to me. It filled me with dread thinking about what my dear wife's reaction will be. She bowed and said, Thalia, daughter of Zeus and lieutenant of Lady Artemis. Now Hades and Poseidon was angry at me saying I was a hypocrite. They were cursing me about having sired a demigod. I slammed my master bolt onto the floor that made a shockwave and shouted silence. The room became eerily silent which was good. But the bad part is that I could feel some glares on me, then I looked at my lovely wife. Worst mistake of my immortal life because she had a look downright frightening. She growled out, we will be have a few words late dearie. I gulped and silent cursed anything in particular for putting me in this position. I quickly saw the book and thought it just might save me. So I transported the book into my hands and opened to chapter 2 and began. No pav. Chapter 2. It has been a few months since Naruto arrived in this new land. Learning a new language had been surprisingly easy. Annabeth and Athena had a thoughtful look while the other gods, goddesses, and demigods had surprised looks on their faces. The gods thought it was very uncommon that a demigod could learn a new language besides ancient Greek easily. Unless they were born into it. It was impossible to have the much of learning capability unless he had a lot of help. But the boy was not even there for a year yet. Though he did find out that he was dyslexic because of the fact that he would sometimes get the words backwards. Of course all the occupants in the room thought. That was not all bad, for you see. He had met a boy with the same problem. His name was Percy Jackson. Looks went to the boy sitting on the throne room filled with surprise because he was in the series so quickly. The two got along very well. They were both impulsive and that hated being in school. Athena and Annabeth looked scandalized while all the Poseidon smiled and put his thumb up in job well done. Everyone else was either laughing or had an emotionless mask on. Naruto's reason was because of his experience in the academy back home, while Percy's reason was that weird shit happened to him and that made not a lot of people like him. Now, Naruto being himself did not really give a rat's ass about that. All the demigods while Hestia was thinking the same thing smiled and thought what a good friend. That and the fact that he told Percy about his ninja abilities only strengthened their friendship. Percy wished that he could make shadow clones to do his own homework. Percy looked envious and wanted that ability because all his clones would do all the chorus and homework for him. So did Annabeth with totally different reasons of course. Then through that friendship came another. Through Percy, he had met Grover Underwood. G-Man shouted Percy. The boy was a cripple because he was always seen with crutches. He was also a bit of a hippie in his opinion because of the fact that he barely ever ate meat and by the way he dressed. Though all in all, Grover was a very nice guy. He usually looked out for Percy and himself the best he could, of course being crippled made him a bit weak. Now, however, our trio was on a bus to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They were taking a trip to learn about Greek mythology, not that Naruto needed it since he knew a lot already. Athena and Annabeth wanted to know more about the elemental nations. Sitting in his seat, Naruto saw what Percy was wearing for today. With his dark hair, he wore an orangish shirt, blue jeans, and some black shoes. Grover, who was sitting right next to Percy, had his usual crutches, a yellow shirt and some oversized pants on that hid his shoes. Naruto was the oddball of the group. Compared to his old clothes, he wore a pair of black DC shoes, some ripped jeans, and a black shirt on that had a picture of a skull with blue flames licking the teeth, while a bluish-silver Chinese dragon broke through the top of the skull. Aphrodite thought his choice of clothing was good and drifted in thought. All the males in the room thought the design on the shirt was good. He was getting annoying lie Percy at the moment because Nancy Bobafett was throwing wads of her peanut butter and jelly at Grover, who was acting like nothing was happening to him for their sake. Sure, if Percy did anything to stop her he would be expelled for something stupid. The kid was already on probation because of the odd shit that happened to him, but he could not help it. Naruto, however, was not and he could do anything within reason. He smirked in anticipation. I am going to kill her. Naruto heard Percy mumble. It is okay. I like peanut butter. Grover commented as he had to dodge piece of Nancy's lunch. Hey G-Man, do you really like peanut butter? Asked Percy. It's okay Percy, but not my favorite things to eat. That's it. Percy growled out as he started to get up, but Grover kept him down. That is when Percy saw the look in Naruto's eyes and smirked. You're already on probation. Grover reminded Percy. You know who'll get blamed if anything happens. Percy smirked and said, only if I am the one doing it. That statement made Grover suddenly look at Naruto and he was about to warn his other friend in the seat next to them, but he never got the chance to because at that moment, Nancy threw another piece of her lunch at Grover. Naruto, who had been fiddling with a paper football, immediately threw the paper projectile at the wad and it caught the piece of sandwich and kept on traveling to the window where it struck through a bit. Is Boba Fett. Star Wars Percy and Nico shouted while Thalia and Annabeth's sweat dropped. Naruto started with an annoyed smirk as he made fun of the girl's last name. Please stop that. Why the hell you care Uzumaki? You too cool for those two losers, so why bother helping them? Doridide questioned. Skeel she has a crush on Naruto that is so cute but Naruto doesn't. Because they are better people than you are. Naruto said with a glare that sent chills down the girl's spine. Now please stop her next time, the paper football will be in you and not the window. Aphrodite thought I wonder what he looks when he is older, hopeful he is handsome. Maybe this book will entertain me if it has romances. Like Naruto and a hunter or even a harem. All the other gods and goddesses thought yup sounds like something Hades would do. Nancy took another look at window to see part of the paper was outside and paled. She quickly nodded her head. Good girl. Naruto said making a lot of the students around them laugh, included Percy and Grover. XXXX. Mr. Brunner led the museum tour. He rode up front in his wheelchair, leading the group through the big galley, past marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orange pottery. Naruto could not help but chuckle at the choice of colors. Naruto looked at Percy and saw the boy was blown away by the fact that this old stuff was in good condition. "Well, seaweed brain, it is in a museum," whispered Annabeth. Percy had the decency to blush and stutter. Aphrodite smiled at them and thought, "Perkabeth, hopeful I didn't change that." "Dude, your mouth is hanging open." Percy's face went red as he closed his mouth. Naruto just laughed at his friend's expression. "Sorry, it is just that this stuff is really old." Well, when you have fanatics looking for this stuff, they find it and try and bring it back to the condition it was once in," Naruto said. Annabeth and Athena thought maybe a child of Athena married to the blonde's family. Percy looked at Naruto oddly before shaking his head. "I keep forgetting that you are one of those fanatics." This made Annabeth and Athena guess more likely, but they could be wrong. Only when he gets claimed then they will know for sure. "I mean, you read about all that Greek mythology all the time." The other occupants in the room looked at Athena or Annabeth because Naruto acted somewhat like a child of Athena. "There is some pretty interesting stuff." Naruto shrugged as they walked with the group to where Mr. Brunner had stopped. "Besides, Mr. Brunner is under the assumption that we should both know about it all." Percy just rolled his eyes. "Easy for you to say, you're interested in it. I mean that class and math class is what you excel in." Athena and Annabeth smiled while Percy and Grover both thought, "Isn't that Mrs. Dodd's class? The others are mediocre, like me." Athena and Annabeth smiled, disappeared but said nothing. Touché." Naruto replied knowing he had been had there. Percy usually tried his best, but thanks to his dyslexia and ADHD, he had a hard concentrating on much of anything at school. So the guy just didn't have much interest in them. Turning their attention to Mr. Brunner, they went quiet, listened to the guy tell them about the ancient gods and other stuff like that. He had gathered them around a 13-foot-tall column with a big sphinx on the top, and the man started telling us how it was a grave marker, a stele, for a girl about our age. He told us about the carvings on the sides. Naruto noticed that Percy was actually paying attention, but the idiots around them would not shut up, and when Percy told them to be quiet, for some odd reason Ms. Dods, the annoying substitute math teacher, would give the both of them the evil eye. Percy and Grover winced at the reminder of Mrs. Dods while thinking, how did Naruto excel in that class? It was like she expected them to do something bad. That annoyed Naruto even further, and he was getting a bad vibe from her. The gods and goddesses all thought, how can he sense a monster? Her chakra was odd too. He would have to keep an eye out for her. Athena nodded her head approvingly at how Naruto was taking precautions. Grover noticed this as well, and we both nodded to each other. This was someone they would keep an eye out for because when Percy told them that he thought she was not human, Grover gave him a very serious look like he already knew and agreed with him. Alias shouted at Grover saying, "You are going to blow your cover, geez, they're probably going to get Naruto and Calphead killed." Naruto just didn't like her because she was an old bitch. Wow, I wonder if he will say it to her face, hopeful soon, thought Percy. Anyway, Mr. Brunner just kept on talking about Greek funeral art. When Nancy blabbed about a naked man on the stele, Naruto saw Percy snapped and practically yelled at her to shut up. "Mr. Jackson." "Busted," sang Annabeth and Thalia. Came the voice of Mr. Brunner, "Did you have a comment?" "No sir." Percy replied, embarrassed by his outburst, which made Naruto shake his head. Sure, he was going to say the same to the redhead, but Percy beat him to it. The wheelchair man then pointed to one of the pictures on the stele, asking Percy what the picture meant. Knowing Percy, he will answer in a very short answer if any, came Annabeth's voice. Percy looked at Annabeth in surprise, but Annabeth's response was to just stuck out her tongue at him. Everyone laughed at Percy's red face. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Brunner said, looking not that satisfied. "And can you tell me why?" Seeing Percy have a hard time answer that question, Naruto decided to intervene. "Told you, seaweed brain," joked Annabeth. "The psycho ate his kid because there was some prophecy telling him that his kids were going to take over one day like he did." "That is the circle of life for you, brat," said Ares. Naruto explained, getting a sigh of relief from Percy. He Titan Lord went and got his panties in a bunch and ate his kids because of that, but all he really did was set the prophecy in motion and screwed himself over because his wife hit her last born, Zeus. "See, Mother Ray liked me best," shouted out Zeus. Everyone just sighed and tried to ignore Zeus's rambling. Hades and Poseidon whispered to each other, saying something close to Mama Boy. And gave the guy a rock to eat. Talk about a real rockhead. Zeus growled and shouted out stupid Ingrid and pouted like a 4-year-old. While everyone else laughed loudly at Zeus' expense. Naruto joked, which made a lot of people laugh, including Mr. Brunner. Anyway, when Zeus was all grown up, he tricked his dad into barfing up his brothers and sisters, and well, the war between Titans and God came to be, and the gods won. "Ew." One of the girls commented on the barfing part. "You didn't even know what father's stomach looked or smelled like," stupid mortal shouted out all the elder gods and goddesses. Of course, in my opinion, I find it odd that even if the gods were immortal, that they survived in Rockhead's stomach all those years. Heh, look at me little brother, I am still alive and covered in stomach acid, let's hug. Naruto joked, making people snicker. Zeus snickered while his brothers and sisters silently glared at him. Behind the two everyone heard Nancy Bobofit mumble, like we're going to use this in real life. Like it's going to say on our job applications, please explain why Kronos ate his kids. Athena said it might not be on a job application, but a tester quiz certainly. And why, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Uzumaki? Mr. Brunner said, to paraphrase Miss Bobofit's excellent question, does this matter in real life? Busted. Grover muttered. Shut up. Nancy barked at Grover, her face going redder than her hair. I don't know. Percy shrugged, a little relieved that Nancy was picked as well. You got me. Naruto said, maybe if we go to Greece we need to know this stuff. I see. Mr. Brunner said, a bit disappointed. Well, half credit to you both. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine. The elder gods and goddesses that were trapped in his stomach winced at the memory. Which made him disgorge his other 5 children, who of course, being immortal gods, had been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. Worst time of my life. Shouted Demeter and Hades. They looked at each other then glared at one another. Then they looked away and huffing while muttering. The gods defeated their father, sliced him to pieces with his own scythe. That must be painful, whispered Percy. Annabeth sighed and said, really, seaweed brain, getting hit with a scythe hurts, I didn't know that. Well, sorry wise girl, shouted Percy. Annabeth had a light red dusting on her cheeks. When suddenly all the occupants heard a high-pitched squealing sound coming from the love goddess. After Apollo healed everyone of their deaf ears they began. And scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dods, would you lead us back outside? The class drifted off, the girls holding their stomachs, the guys roughhousing like normal and acting like morons. When aren't males morons, hissed out Artemis. Everyone looked at her and sighed, same old Artemis. Grover, Percy and Naruto were about to follow when Mr. Brunner said, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Uzumaki. They told Grover to keep one going while they handled whatever Wheels was going to say to them. Sir. Mr. Brunner had this look, like he knew a lot more than he let on and that had seen too much. You two must learn the answer to my question. About the Titans? Percy asked. About real life. And how your studies apply to it. Oh. The boys mumbled, though Naruto had the sinking feeling that the man was talking about both things. Athena beamed and hoped she was related to the blonde, while Annabeth was hoping for the same thing. What you boys learn from me, he started, is vitally important. I expect you to treat it as such. I will only accept the best from both of you, Percy Jackson, Naruto Uzumaki. This made both of the boys a bit angry at the man, sure he was cool in class when he set up those tournament days, but the man was pushing the two of them a bit hard. Percy mumbled something about trying harder, while Naruto just nodded his head as they left to go eat. Naruto noticed that Mr. Brunner gave a long sad look at Estelle. It was odd to say the least. Heh, maybe the guy knew the girl, not likely. XXXX. The class gathered on the front steps of the museum where they could watch the foot traffic along 5th Avenue. The boys noticed that storm clouds were brewing. So Zeus is having a tantrum again, said Poseidon. Then Zeus glared at his older brother but said nothing. While his sisters giggled while other brother Hades laughed at him. Hey Naruto, what do you think is going on with the weather and all? Naruto gave the boy a are you serious look. You're asking me? I am not the freaking weatherman. Burn kelphead, laughed Thalia. Percy's face was red with embarrassment and he shouted out, shut up Pinocone face. Thalia looked at him, then narrowed her eyes and said, do you want to go kelphead? Yeah I do Pinocone face. That does it Jackson, you're dead. Bring it on Grace. Fine, it's your funeral then airhead. No, it's the other way around Waterboy. Enough, boomed Zeus and Poseidon. We looked at one another and sighed, then sat back down and began the story again. But odd crap like this has been going on for a bit. You see it all over the news nowadays. Strange this is, no one else seems to notice the clouds other than us. With that, the two boys joined Grover as the fountain and sat down to eat. It was away from the others so they would not be bothered, and the fact that Percy didn't like being part of the school in the first made it seem that we're not part of the school for freaks. Of course, Naruto didn't care, but he was at first cheesed that he had to a school like this. Attention. Are you always in trouble, seaweed brain? No I don't think so. Replied Percy. Yes you are kelphead, remarked Thalia. Traitor, muttered Percy. Anyways let's move on or we will never end these books, cried out Grover. Nah, Percy answered, not from Brunner. I just wish he'd lay off me sometimes. I mean I am not a genius. Just noticed that, did you kelphead? Snorted Thalia. Hey. Everyone laughed at Percy's face. Naruto rolled his eyes and said, heh, it is like he knows something about us. Hey, maybe we are related to some old Greek god. Very foreshadowing, replied Athena and Annabeth. Artemis nodded her head. The boys looked at each other and then burst out laughing, though for Grover it was a nervous laugh. After a bit, they were quiet. Then Grover asked for Percy's apple. Demeter shouted out, fruit is good, but cereal is far better for young ones. Would you shut up, women, about cereal for one day? Screamed out Hades. Maybe if you give me back my precious daughter, replied Demeter. You will in the summer, yawned out Hades. Then the boy gave it to him. Even in alternative dimension you love apples, G-Man, laughed Percy. Well yeah, I am a vegetarian, snorted Grover. Percy seemed a little lost in thought. Thinking about your mom? Naruto asked. Yeah, we are kind of close to her place. I hope she is doing alright, I mean she has been living with Gabe after all. Percy's face darkened momentarily but smiled at his gruesome fate. But no one noticed Percy's face. Percy said, a little angry about her still with Gabe. Dude, I am sure she is alright. She put up with that slob this far, I am sure can do it a little bit more. Thanks, Naruto, thought Percy. Still don't see what she sees in that guy though. It was to protect me from monsters, thought Percy again. Naruto commented. Percy nodded and was about to unwrap his sandwich when Nancy Bobafett and her annoying friends came over and got brave by dumping her lunch on Grover, making Naruto and Percy glare at her. Oops. Bitch, thought both Thalia and Annabeth. All the goddesses thought, what a rude mortal. She drawled out while smirking at Percy, as if daring him to do something about that, and Naruto did not have a paper football help some. Naruto could tell that Percy was pissed and was trying to keep his temper down and was failing miserably. Then something weird happened. The water from the fountain rose up and pushed her onto her butt. He saw it perfectly because it had pulled his shadow up to hit her. Naruto is very powerful, all the gods and goddesses thought. Well, Zeus thought maybe too powerful. That is not what she saw though. Percy and Naruto pushed me. Then that old bitch, Miss Dods, came right up to them with a hard glare. Around them they heard whispers of what happened. Apparently, Naruto was not the only one to see the water and the shadows move. After the old crone had made her Nancy was alright, she turned the two boys and started off with that now honey crap, but Percy beat her to it. I know. Percy grumbled, a month of erasing workbooks. No, never say your punishment because that will just make it worse. Apollo, Hermes, Nico, and Percy shouted out. Annabeth turned to glare at Percy and put on a sweet smile and said, now how would you know that, seaweed brain? Ah, from the stoles quickly spilled the beans. She nodded her head and looked back at the book again with interest. Nico and Thalia whispered, whipped. Naruto just sighed. This old hag was probably going to give him something worse. Though, it would seem that was not the right thing for Percy to say. Both of you, come with me. Hades thought Alecto is acting strange because she should know that he is my son. Wait. Grover spoke, it was me. I pushed her. We both started at Grover for that. Percy was stunned that Grover was trying to cover for them. Naruto was put off that Grover wanted the punishment for them. Hestia smiled and then said, such a brave satyr. Grover blushed and bowed, then said thank you, milady. The old crone didn't seem to buy it and glared at him so hard that his chin trembled. He was scared of the old crone after all. I don't think so, Mr. Underwood. But. You will stay here. Miss Dodds forcefully said each word with anger, making Grover shrink a bit. It is okay, man. Percy said to his friend while Naruto nodded. With that, they left with Percy giving Nancy an evil glare while Naruto slowly took out a paper football, making the girl pale. Wow, that is my new brother, awesome. Shouted out an excited Nico. That only made Naruto smirk. Though, when they looked back to Miss Dodds, she was already at the entrance of the museum. The boys looked at each other, thinking how the hell did she get over there so fast. Naruto got a gut feeling that this was not a good thing. No kidding, boy, sighed Artemis. Hey little sis, I think he is cool, smirked Apollo. Apollo, I am not your little sis, we are twins and I am the older one anyways. Hissed out an irritated Artemis. XXXX. The boys walked to the end of the entrance, thinking that the old crone was going to make them buy a shirt to replace Nancy's wet one, but that seemed to not be the case because they walked right past the gift shop. Something is not right. How far into the museum does she need to take us to bitch at us? No, to mostly likely kill you slowly and painful, boomed Zeus. Poseidon glared at him and asked if we could continue or I will have to hit Zeus soon. Naruto thought as they walked deeper into the museum. He looked that Percy had the same thoughts as him. Great minds think alike, commented Percy. What great mind, mocked Thalia and Annabeth. Percy pouted and Nico came over and patted him on the back and muttered, girls. Percy smiled and nodded his head in agreement. The small group made it back to the Greek and Roman gallery of the museum to find the place completely empty. They heard her growl as she looked at the marble picture of the Greek gods. Sexist mortals, muttered all the goddesses, while the female demigods nodded their heads in agreement. All the gods and male demigods looked appalled. You boys have been making trouble for us. She said suddenly. This made the boys look at her oddly. Percy was thinking about the candy he was selling, while Naruto was thinking about the way he has been doing his homework and selling some of it to people who did not do theirs. Awesome, thought Percy, Nico, and Thalia, while Annabeth looked conflicted with a hint of disappointment. While Hermes and Apollo shouted out, we love this demigod. Meanwhile the goddesses looked disappointed and a little impressed. Well? Say nothing, shouted out the male demigods, Apollo and Hermes. I am not sure what you are talking about. Naruto replied. Yes, play the stupid card and deny everything, shouted out Nico and Percy. Ma'am, I don't, Percy started, but the old crone didn't let him finish. Your time is up. She hissed ominously. Well, that was fast, everyone thought. Then the weirdness came. Her eyes began to glow like barbac coals. Her fingers stretched into talons. Her jacket melted into large leathery wings. She was not human, that was for sure. She was pretty much an old bitch with bat wings and claws and a mouth full of yellow fangs, and it seemed that she was the boys as her next meal. Wow, never had that description of the Furies like that before, thought Hades. Please tell me you see that too. Naruto whispered to Percy to fearfully nodded. No, you guys are just imagining it, said Thalia. Good, then I am not going insane. Or are you? Asked Thalia in a serious voice. That is when things got even weirder, because Mr. Brunner, who had been reading a book at the entrance, was at the entrance of the gallery with a pen and some guitar keychains in his hands. Keychains? Questioned Percy. But ho, boys. The man yelled to them as he threw the items at them. That was when the old crone lunged at Percy. Naruto, thinking fast, made a seal appear on his pants and kunai holster appeared. He then took out 2 of the black knives and threw them at whatever Miss Dods had turned into. Get away from my friend, you psycho hag. Apollo and Hermes made a sign that said go Naruto go. While all the other occupations in the room just sighed and shook their heads. While Artemis thought Apollo must have been adopted, or while he was a baby bragged his head repeatedly on something hard. Well, he old had dodged that. He then saw Percy catch the pen, but the odd thing was that it had turned to a goldish sword. Riptide. Cheered the demigods. He then caught the guitar keychains in both hands in time to flip out of the way of Miss Dodd's claws. Percy's eyes widened when he saw his friend's new weapons. Wonder what the weapons are? Questioned everyone. In Naruto's right hand was a red-hilted blade, and where the blade meets the hilt was a fierce-looking fox. The blade looked to be shooting out of the mouth of the fox, and it was orange. That is, thought Thalia. The other blade was black-hilted, and instead of a fox design, it was black dragon with red eyes. The blade on it was black as well. Thalia was drooling a little at how bad she would look if she had those weapons. While Ares was nodding his head in approval. Naruto rolled over to where Percy was and looked at Miss Dods. She was getting up from her strike at Naruto, and she looked pretty intimidating. Percy looked shaken by this, and it did not help that Naruto was a bit scared too. The first monster is always the toughest because of the shock, thought the demigods. He had never fought something like this before. The demigods were surprised that no monsters lived in the elemental nations and thought this would be a perfect place to live. Not counting the wars, ninjas, and tailed beasts. Then, she charged at the boys, and they thought of were to stab her, and they did. Just as their blades met, the old crone burst in a shower of yellow powder. It was like she vaporized on the spot with nothing but the smell of sulfur and a dying screech that sent chills up their spines. There was an evil chill in the air, like those creepy eyes were watching their every move. Well, that is unpleasant, thought the gods. Well, the goddesses thought it was a little creepy. The boys were now alone in the gallery once more. They looked back to their weapons and were shocked to find something different in their possession. Percy had a gold ballpoint pen when Naruto had 2 black wristbands with a depicted animal on the guitar attachments on the wristbands. Wristbands is so much better than a pen because it is on your wrists instead in a pocket. Stupid no pocket gym shorts, thought Percy. Okay, Naruto said out loud, I think we should get back to the others, something odd is definitely going on here. Right. Percy is being obedient, that's new, commented Annabeth. Well, Percy blushed. Percy agreed when he saw that Mr. Brunner was not in the room they were in. Observing the scene, where are you and what have you done to Seaweed Brain, snorted Annabeth. SS shut up, wise girl, shuddered Percy. Would you guys quit with your flirting, shouted Thalia. Percy and Annabeth blushed and said you can begin now. While Aphrodite was squealing, but after 5 minutes they finally began. Back outside, it had started raining. Grover was using his museum map as a tent to keep himself from getting too wet, while Nancy was still wet from earlier. She looked to them and smirked. I hope Mrs. Kerr whipped your butts. Who? Percy let out. Our teacher, duh. The boys blinked, asking who that was, but all she did was walk away. They asked Grover where the old crone was, but he just gave them an odd look and asked, who? But he did pause first before saying it, like he knew something was going on. Grover, you are blowing you cover, never ever hesitate, shouted out Thalia and Hermes. Not funny, man. Percy said, this is serious. He didn't answer as thunder boomed overhead. Shaking his head, Naruto led Percy over to Mr. Brunner, who was under a red umbrella reading his book, like he never moved. He looked up distracted and asked, ah. My pen and good luck charms. The best good luck charm there is, said Ares. No, one of the best good luck charm would be a wheat sign, and it turns into a hoe. Now how could you slay monsters with a hoe, questioned Hades. Well, just swing with the metal part, Hades, and it will cut them, but the best part is that it could be used for farming. Remarked Demeter. Please bring your own writing utensil in the future, Mr. Jackson. Oh, and thank you for finding my good luck charms, Mr. Uzumaki. He said as they boys handed the items to him. Sir, Percy started, where is Miss Dods? Boo. He said with a blank face. You know, the other chaperone, the math teacher. Naruto explained. Boys, there is now Miss Dods on this trip, nor is there one in the school. Are you boys feeling alright? He asked concerned. Now Chiron will make those poor boys think they are crazy, said Aphrodite. Boys are crazy, remarked Artemis. Well, what if he steals one of your hunters then, questioned Aphrodite. Then I will personally hunt him down. Screamed out Artemis. Well, I hope he does then, just to see your face, smiled Aphrodite. The boys just sighed and left, making their way back to Grover. On the way back, Naruto muttered out, I think we just entered the Twilight Zone. Everyone laughed because the blonde was different, alright, but in a good way. Anyway, so who wants to read next? Suddenly it got dark with storm clouds, and you could hear thunder rumbling throughout the sky. Then lightning flashed in the once peaceful blue sky. Until a powerful lightning bolt hit the throne room with enough power to create a shock wave. When the dust died down, the demigods could look where the flash of lightning originated from. In its wake there was a cloaked figure that was undoubtedly a female and could see her mouth. One reason is because you could see her chest and her body curves. Apollo, Hermes, and Ares wanted to know who this mystery woman was because they were drooling and blushing. Acting like total lovesick fools just because of her body figure and power she showed. Of course Zeus, being Zeus, had to demand who she was and how she got here. Why are you here and why have you come, boomed Zeus. She bowed and smiled while saying father. Zeus looked confused and shocked but said, how are you, my daughter? She smiled, which made most of the male population blush. Zeus looked at her and nodded but then asked to remove the hood. The mystery female sighed but nodded her head. She grabbed her hood and pulled it down and it revealed Thalia. Zeus then looked at her and muttered, how is this possible? But waved his hand to let her begin her introduction. In a beautiful voice that left all the males breathless, she said, Thalia Grace, daughter of Zeus and girlfriend to Naruto Uzumaki. Wait, now there are two of me for double the awesomeness, smiled Thalia. Thals just smiled and nodded her head in agreement. But just call me Thals. It took a moment for Zeus to get what her last words to her introduction. His eyes flashed and he shouted out to the heavens, my daughter, you stay away from that son of Hades. But Aphrodite screamed loudly saying, I love myself with all these romances. Then the love goddess thought, I will have to ask about other romances in that dimension and maybe I can beat myself. The love goddess smiled with a little evil glint in her pretty eyes. The rest of the relations after Thal's introduction got were open mouth and widened eyes. But only two other people had another expressions on their faces. Were Annabeth, whose face looked like a Christmas tree or that Christmas came early. The second person was her mother Athena that had a glint in her cloudy gray eyes. She looked at the book and read the title, then smiled while whispering Naruto. The people in the throne room questioned who is going to read next and Thalia that just came raised her hand. So the Zeus passed her the book and she began. Life after the freak show. Fun is it not, remarked Thalia. Just look at seaweed brain over there, continue Annabeth teasingly pointed at Percy. Percy huffed and said, wow, I have such good friends. You and Naruto are great friends, replied Thals. Went on like normal, well as normal as it could get in this school. Because you have Percy there, taunted Nico. Percy looked at his fellow demigods and muttered, what is it, pick on Percy Day. For the rest of the year both the boys were a bit put off by the revelation that Miss Dods never existed. In her place was a perky blonde woman named Mrs. Kerr. When either of the boys would ask something about the old hag, people just looked at the like they were nuts. But you kelp head seaweed brain, shouted out Thalia, Thals and Annabeth. Naruto, however, did like the new teacher thought. She was a refreshing change from the old crone. Every immortal in the throne room gave a small smile and thought this book just might be unendurable than they thought. Though everyone else seemed to not even know what the hell they were talking about, Grover seemed like he did. Grover! Shouted out the demigods. He would always hesitate before denying it though. He was such a bad liar. Very true, said Percy, Hermes, and Apollo. Something was going on. They knew that something had happened at the museum. Very observant, remarked Athena while Annabeth just nodded her head and smiling. Anyway, that freak storm continued and one time it blew out the windows in Percy's apartment. Wow, Zeus must be mad, said Poseidon. No, serious, I didn't know that, snorted Hades. Enough, boomed out Zeus, who by the way was looking really irritated. Luckily, Naruto offered him a place to stay until things were fixed and ready to go at his place. AWWW. Such a nice boy, I have made my decision that he will definitely have a great love life, screamed out Aphrodite. A few days later, the biggest tornado ever spotted in the Hudson Valley, touched down only 50 from Yancey Academy. Now Zeus, you know you can't endanger millions of people with your petty tantrums, spat out Hera, still a little resentful for the fact Zeus cheated on her. In at least 2 dimensions and 2 times with the same woman. Yes dear, Zeus said in a fearful voice. Which was scary in itself, luckily they didn't get hurt. That's good, everyone thought. Percy started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. His grade slipped from DS to FS. Perseus Jackson, how dare you? Screamed out Annabeth. What was his reaction? Trying to find anything to hiding behind anywhere that Annabeth couldn't see him. But it was too late for that because she stormed over to him and demanded never to have failing grades like that ever again. Everyone besides the 2 thought poor Percy, especially Zeus, because he knows what is on the receiving end of a woman's fury. He got into more fights with Nancy Bobofit and her friends. Way to go, punk, shouted out Ares. Everyone else sighed but said nothing. He was sent out into the hallway in almost every class. Naruto was in some of his class, he was feeling the same way, he stayed under control most of the time. I wonder what would happen if he lost complete control, thought everyone in the throne room. Something odd was going on and they were somehow affected and it was getting really annoying. Though when Percy got in trouble for calling their English teacher an old sot, whatever that meant, the school sent a letter his mom. Sally trailed off Poseidon. Telling her that Percy would not be allowed back next year, the boy's mood lifted. Is the punk homesick and a mama's boy, you are such a weakling, mocked Ares. Percy was biting his tongue but was going to shout at the god of war, but a voice beat him to the punch. Ares, do not mock the boy, unlike you he actually cares about his mother unlike a certain someone. Howled Hera while glaring at him and to see if he would oppose her. He didn't. Percy and the other demigods stored this information not to mock the relationship of mother to child ever if Hera was in hearing distance. But just a little bit. Naruto could tell Percy missed his mom because he hated that fact that she was with Gabe of all people. Oh. Could the goddesses well expect Artemis and Athena? He is so thoughtful to his mother, screamed out Aphrodite. Yes, how I wish I could have a child like that, replied Hera with a hint of envy. The kid was homesick, no surprise there. Naruto sighed. He came to reality, exam week was come up soon and he, like Percy and Grover, had to study. Like Shikamaru says, it is going to be troublesome. Very, muttered the demigods, expect of course Annabeth. Who by the way was glaring at each one of them. XXXX. The night before the exam started, Naruto and Percy decided to have a study session at Percy's dorm. Percy having a party. Shouted out Hermes, Apollo, Thalia and the male demigods. Nu shouted out the goddesses and Annabeth with equal force as the males with Atreides Thalia. Now Annabeth was really glaring at her fellow demigods because studying was really important to her. Throughout the night, Naruto could see that Percy was getting more and more agitated. Well yeah, it's Percy for you, said Thalia. Percy looked in her direction and sighed while mumbling out stupid annoying cousin. Finally he threw his book across the room. Perseus Jackson, that is not how you treat a book. Screamed out Annabeth. Sorry, hopeful it wouldn't happen again, but I would not count on that, replied Percy. Temper Naruto commented, trying liven up the atmosphere. Sorry, but how the hell am I supposed to know the difference, Chiron and Charon? Simple, one has an I and the other has an A in their name. Very true, muttered Athena and Annabeth. Naruto smartly said with smirk. Percy slapped his face and gave Naruto a glare. Okay, let me help you then. Chiron, the one with the I, is half horse and trains heroes. Chiron is much better than Charon, shouted out all the demigods. Then we have Charon, the one with the A, he is the ferryman of the dead who is a greed ass. Naruto is right, he is very greedy, Thal said dreamily. How would you know this, daughter, questioned Zeus. Because I met him before, replied Thales. The dude loves Olympian money. Very true, said Hades. Is that how you remember everything? Give it a short description and or insult them. That is a good way to learn, I never thought about it like that, remarked Percy. You would be a natural because you love to insult stuff, spoke Nico and Thalia. Percy asked while trying to hide a smirk. Easier for me to remember stuff like that. Naruto smiled. But my way might be best for you. It is, thought Percy. Everyone has a different way of remembering stuff. Yeah. Percy said. I can't believe I am saying this, but I think I should go see Mr. Brunner, he might have a way that is good for me. Want me to come? Naruto asked. Ah, he is so thoughtful, cooed Aphrodite. Yeah, so I don't feel like a total idiot going down there. Percy replied and got up to get his book. That's right, respect the book, spoke Annabeth. Naruto just laughed. They walked downstairs to the faculty offices. Most of them were dark and empty, but S door was ajar, light from his window stretching across the hallway floor. They were 3 steps from the door handle when the duo heard voices inside the office. Mr. Brunner. He must be talking to Grover, said Percy. Why would you know that, questioned Annabeth. Because that is what he was talking about when I went down there, remarked Percy. Asked a question. A voice that was definitely Grover's said, worried about Percy and Naruto, sir. Well yeah, I would too if it was my kid, thought the Olympians. The boys froze at that. They nodded and leaned in to eavesdrop, not that they did it a lot, but when a friend is talking about you to a teacher, you'd want to what was going on. Alone this summer? No, Percy is going with Naruto, said Aphrodite. Grover was saying. I mean, a kindly one in the school. Now that we know for sure, and they know too. We would only make matters worse by rushing them, Mr. Brunner said. We need the boys to mature more. You were going to wait for a long time for Percy, but I am not sure about Naruto, remarked Thalia. No, Naruto is very mature, but can be childish at times when needed to lighten the mood, replied Falls. But he may not have time. The summer solstice deadline will have to be resolved without them, Grover. Let him enjoy his ignorance while he still can. Sir, they saw her. Their imagination, Mr. Brunner insisted. The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince them of that. But the mist doesn't always fool demigods unless it is really powerful, said Athena. But they are figuring out who they are, and very soon they will come to their destiny sooner or later, Athena continued on. Sir, I can't fail in my duties again. Quit blaming yourself over that goat boy, it was my decision anyways, shouted out Thalia. No, he is right, it is his fault that you died, daughter, angrily said Zeus. No, it is not, Dad, shouted Falls and Thalia. Grover's voice was choked with emotion. You know what that would mean. Failure like you failed my daughter, cracked Zeus. You haven't failed, Grover, Mr. Brunner said kindly. I should have seen her for what she was. Now let's just worry about keeping Percy and Naruto alive until next fall. Which is going to difficult because of Percy's heroics, smiled Thalia. Naruto too, but luckily they have Annabeth and I, snorted Falls. The mythology book that Percy had brought with him fell to the floor. Nuo, don't ever give away your position to the enemy, shouted out Hermes. That could be dangerous, punk, sneered Ares. Then Naruto's eyes widened in panic as all went silent. As soon as Percy grabbed the book, Naruto grabbed Percy and they ran for it. Good thinking, Naruto, leave no evidence behind, muttered Hermes. Percy saw something larger than Mr. Brunner come out of the room. He steered them to a nearby room to hide for a bit. A few seconds later they heard a slow clop clop clop, like muffled wood blocks, then a sound like an animal snuffling right outside the door. A large dark shape paused in front of the glass and then moved on. Naruto, of course you are imagining a joke, Nico. Shut it, Nico, snapped Falls. Okay, already sorry, said Nico. Both the boys were sweating, that was too close. Naruto can't ever get caught if he really tried, laughed Falls. Somewhere in the hallway, Mr. Brunner spoke. Nothing, he murmured. My nerves haven't been right since the winter solstice. Mine neither, Grover said. But I could have sworn. Always trust your judgment, said Falls, Annabeth, and Athena. No, all you need is power, cried out Ares. No, strategy outweighs power always, Ares, screamed Athena. No, it does not, screamed back Ares. Silence and continue the book, boomed Zeus. Go back to the dorm, Mr. Brunner told him. You've got a long day of exams tomorrow. I feel sorry for him for doing the exams year after year, went through the minds of all the demigods besides Annabeth. Don't remind me. They heard Grover whine. When the lights went off in Mr. Brunner's office went off, they bolted out of the room they were hiding like a bat out hell. When they made it back to Percy's dorm, he locked the door. Good thinking, brats. Oh, now the only way a monster can get in now is a forced entry, said Ares. Falls looked at him weirdly because he never ever compliance Percy. But she quickly thought Ares has nothing against Percy right now. Okay, now we know for sure something is going on. Yeah, but what and who would want us dead? Most monsters and some immortals that you piss off if you are unlucky, thought the demigods. Like Ares, whispered Falls. I mean, they talked as if someone was after us. There, said the demigods while the gods and goddesses nodded their heads. Naruto pondered. Hey, you can stay the night. Percy said. I mean, you're the ninja here and if anything happens we would have a better chance at surviving. Fine with me, Naruto said. He then sighed, I just hope we survive the exams. Were they hard, Percy? Questioned Nico. Not really. Who are you and what have you done to my cousin, shouted Nico Thalia. You didn't let me finish, as I was saying if you were trying to fail. Oh, that explains it, never mind. While the rest of the occupation in the room sighed and shook their heads or laughed out loud. While Annabeth and Athena glared at Percy, making him very uncomfortable. Percy paled and then hung his head, once again reminded of the exams and why they went down there in the first place. I am so screwed. Yup, you are, said Percy. Just then Grover walked in like nothing had happened. Hey, how are you guys doing on the studying? When they both hung their heads and didn't say anything, he got worried. You guys okay? Naruto answered, yep, we are so screwed. Percy, definitely, but I don't think Naruto is, remarked Thalia. Hey! Exclaimed Percy. Well, it's true, commented Thalia. Properly after a few seconds of thinking on Percy's part. XXXX. The next afternoon, they finally got out of their 3-hour Latin exam. 3 hours of that madness. Naruto complained, tests back home were never like this. I want to go there now because there are easier tests, complained Percy. Will you give it a rest, seaweed brain, replied Annabeth. But wise girl, think about it, you get to look at the different culture, said Percy. Now Annabeth had to do a double take on what Percy said again, but smiled then nodded her head. Esther coughed softly and spoke, may I begin again? Percy and Annabeth just nodded their heads while looking at their shoes in thought. Ugh, my eyes are swimming with all the Greek and Roman names that I misspelled. Hey Perce, what did you misspell? Asked Nico. Well, I misspelled my brother Theseus and Hephaestus to name a few, replied Percy. Percy complained as he held his head. Unfortunately, Mr. Brunner called them back in. Percy, he said. Don't be discouraged about leaving Yancey. It's for the best. He then turned to Naruto and asked. What about you? Well, I am split between staying here for Grover's sake or going wherever Percy goes, so he won't be the only new kid. So kind, and I think he will grow up to be a very handsome man with a lot of girls, squealed Aphrodite. He will just be an arrogant man, I just hope no hunters falls for him, thought Artemis. Oh, and don't worry, I am used to hopping around. Mostly hopping dimensions, but you don't need to know that. When they were talking, Percy was getting annoyed by the Nancy Bobofit who, like some others, was still taking the test. I see. Mr. Brunner commented. I guess this place is not the right place for you boys then. It'd only a matter of time. Wow, Chiron give my boyfriend a lasting impression, growled out Falls. Daughter, you must find a different romantic interest, boomed Zeus. Falls just rolled her eyes and tried to ignore her father. Falls then said, can we please get back to the book, because the sooner we are done the sooner I can see my boyfriend. Zeus looked infuriated because he was ignored and decided to talk to his daughter later. Naruto glanced at Percy sadly to see that Percy was upset. I mean, his favorite teacher at this dump of a school and in front of a whole freaking class was telling him that he couldn't handle it here. Chiron really needs to work on his pre-talks, muttered Percy, remembering that day. Yeah, he does, said Annabeth, Falls and Thalia. This made Naruto pissed off. One thing you should know, never piss off Naruto unless you have a death wish, smiled Falls. Percy was his best friend in this land after all. No, Mr. Brunner said. Oh, confound it all. What I'm trying to say, you're not normal, Percy, and neither are you, Naruto. Well, he is my boyfriend, said Falls. I will not get used to you having a boyfriend, Falls, said Annabeth. Well, you should get used to it because it is going to be mentioned a lot in those books, I think, grinned Falls. That's nothing to be. Thanks, I blurted. Thanks a lot, sir, for reminding me. Percy, he called out, but Percy was already out the door. Naruto looked from the door to Mr. Brunner and scowled. Way to choose your words, Mr. Brunner. Naruto said as he left to chase after his friend. He is such a loyal friend, whispered Hestia. The goddesses just nodded their heads in agreement. XXXX. On the last day of the term, Naruto watched as Percy shoved his clothes into his suitcase. They listened to the other guys brag about where they were going this summer. Pigs just like Apollo, snarled out Artemis. Apollo put on a fake smile and shouted out, little sis. She is definitely won't like what happens to Zoe, thought Falls. Those idiots may be juvenile delinquents, but they were also rich juvenile delinquents. One of them asked Percy and Naruto where they were going. My home in the city for the summer. Percy replied. Same here. Naruto said, scaring Percy since he didn't know he had arrived yet. When did you get here? Percy asked while the others went back to what they were doing, as if the two didn't exist since they were nobodies to them. Hey Percy, Naruto and I are not nobodies, that is only Annabeth, called out Falls. Annabeth blushed but then mocked glared at Falls. A few minutes ago, man. Chuckled Naruto. Oh. Percy replied. So remind me again why I am going with you to your place for the day. Naruto said. Probably staying with me so he can at least control me next to Gabe, said Percy. The demigods besides Falls just looked at him with questionable looks. Well, you can tell I have been a bit peeved lately and you usually help out when I am in a bad mood. I wonder what he will do to Gabe, thought Percy. So, I guess I need you to keep me in check because Gabe is going to really piss me off. He will, unfortunately, drawn out Percy. Annabeth looked at Percy with a hint of concern in her storm gray eyes. Noted. Naruto commented, and then his eyes lit up. You know, I live right in the middle. You know, from your apartment to the school. I just noticed that. Hey Thals, do I still play mythomagic cards? Questioned Nico. Yes, death breath you do with your sister, said Thals. Wait, I have a sister, exclaimed Nico. You will have to wait and see, called back Thals. Nico pouted but nodded his head. Good. Then you can come over more often. Percy mumbled as they left the school dorms to get on a bus, though he was wondering how Naruto got from his home to school in time for class. Must be a ninja thing. I want to know how he does it, screamed out Athena and Annabeth. When is the next fighting scene coming up, because this is boring, grinned Ares. Enough talking for now. Zeus raised his master bolt in the air and then slammed his bolt onto the floor, making Olympus shake a little. XXXX. Both boys were dreading how they were going to say goodbye to Grover, but luckily for them, he was on the bus they were on. The whole bus ride, they saw that Grover was very fidgety, like he was expecting something to come out the works to come after him or us. Grover, whatever you do, don't blow your cover, cheered the demigods in the room. He was like this every time they left the school campus. Odd. Though Percy was getting annoyed by it and he blurted out, looking for kindly ones. Naruto smacked his head while Grover nearly jumped out of his seat. Hey Percy, how far did he jump? Questioned Nico. I would say a good foot, replied Percy. Wah, what do you mean? A boy confessed about eavesdropping on his and Mr. Brunner's conversation the night before the exams. "No, deny everything Grover says," shouted out Hermes. Grover's eye twitched. How much did you hear? Oh, not much. What's the summer solstice deadline? Percy asked. Wait, what deadline? Questioned all the immortals. The demigods just looked at the gods with a knowing look that infuriated them. And is that too much for you? Naruto smirked. Naruto always has to get the last word in or has to be a smartest, smiled Thals. He winced. Look, guys, I was just worried for you, see? I mean, hallucinating about. Demon math teachers. Grover, dude. And I was telling Mr. Brunner that maybe you guys were overstressed or something because there was no such person as Mrs. Dods and… Dude, you suck at lying. Grover does suck at lying, admitted all the demigods, and the immortals nodded their heads in agreement. Naruto blurted out, making Grover sputter and his ear turn pink. From his shirt pocket, he fished out a couple of grubby business cards. Just take this, okay? In case you need me this summer. The card was in fancy script, which was murder on their dyslexic eyes, but they finally made out something like. Why is it always in fancy script, thought the demigods. Grover Underwood. Keeper. Best keeper in the history of Camp Half-Blood, cheered out all the demigods. He can't be a good keeper if he lets my daughter die, boomed Zeus. Zeus, will you give it a rest? Hera screamed out against her unfaithful husband. Half-Blood Hill. Where my daughter's imprisonment, Zeus thought darkly. Long Island, New York. 800-009-0009. What's half? Percy started. Don't say it aloud. He yelped. That's my, summer address. I miss camp, thought all of the demigods. All the gods and goddesses looked away in shame, thinking about all the times they missed in their children's lives throughout the ages. That made Naruto's eyes roll. There was something really odd going on, that was for sure. Percy looked a little sad that even Grover had a summer home like the other people at school. Of course not, seaweed brain, he is not normal like your everyday person, laughed Annabeth. At least Naruto is like me and lives close. Okay, he said glumly. So, like, if I want to come visit your mansion. Sorry to break this to you, Percy, but the woods or the big house is not a mansion, said Thals. I know that now, Thals, snapped Percy. While rolling his eyes and whispering about annoying cousins. Thals, Thalia and Nico just grinned at Percy's misfortune. He nodded. Or if you need me. Why would I need you? Percy growled out harshly, surprising even Naruto. Properly not one of your best moments, huh, seaweed brain, Annabeth whispered to Percy. Her voice was so soft that only the two could hear it, and Percy just nodded his head sadly. Grover blushed right down to his Adam's apple. Look, Percy, the truth is, I kind of have to protect you, both of you, he said, making the boys look at him oddly. I mean, they were the one who had to protect him in the school. Grover, Percy said, what exactly are you protecting us from? Oh, nothing at all, muttered Thals. Before he could answer, there was a huge grinding noise under our feet. Black smoke poured from the dashboard and the whole bus filled with a smell like rotten eggs. That is not good, muttered Hephaestus. Bro, screeched out Aphrodite. When will there be action, because this book is starting to be boring, screamed Ares. Shut up, Ares, so we can learn more about this book and what happens, shouted out Athena. The driver cursed and limped the Greyhound bus over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes clanking around in the engine compartment, the driver announced that they'd all have to get off. Percy, Naruto, and Grover filed outside with everybody else. They were on a stretch of country road, no place you'd notice if you didn't break down there. "A little too convent," remarked Athena, while Annabeth just nodded her head in agreement. On our side of the highway was nothing but maple trees and litter from passing cars. On the other side, across 4 lanes of asphalt shimmering with afternoon heat, was an old-fashioned fruit stand. "Fruit," screamed out a happy Demeter. "Shut up, women, no one cares about fruit or cereal for that matter," said Hades. Demeter gasped and looked a little hurt at Hades' hurtful words. Hades had the decency to look ashamed for his little outburst. "Talk about being in the middle of nowhere," Naruto commented while hitting the back of his head on the bus. "Hey Falls, does your boyfriend always do that?" questioned Nico. "Not really, only when he does something really stupid," replied Falls. Raising an eyebrow, he took a look at the fruit stand on the other side of the street. The stuff on sale looked really good. Heaping boxes of blood-red cherries and apples, walnuts and apricots, jugs of cider and a clawfoot tub full of ice. "That does sound good," thought all the occupant in the room. There were no customers, just 3 old ladies sitting in rocking chairs in the shade of a maple tree, knitting the biggest pair of socks they'd ever seen. "Wait, aren't they the Fates?" shouted out Annabeth. After she said that comment, all things went down the drain. Annabeth glared and yelling at Percy, while Falls glared at nothing but empty space. While muttering how she was going to kill her boyfriend when she sees him again. These were no ordinary socks, they were as big as sweaters. Apollo just laughed to break the tense in the silent throne room. "Who wears socks that big?" The lady on the right knitted one of them. The lady on the left knitted the other. The lady in the middle held an enormous basket of electric blue yarn. All 3 women looked ancient. "They are ancient," shouted out the gods and goddesses. With pale faces wrinkled like fruit leather, silver hair tied back in white bandanas, bony arms sticking out of bleached cotton dresses. "So why do they dress like that?" questioned Annabeth. "I don't know, daughter, maybe to blend in," said Athena. Annabeth just nodded her head, agreeing with her mother. The creepy thing is that they were staring right at Percy and Naruto. Falls and Annabeth just looked murderous at both Percy and Naruto for not telling them. While the love goddess just smiled, feeling the love in the air coming from Falls and Annabeth. "Talk about creepy," Naruto commented. "Hey Grover," whatever Naruto was going to ask died in his throat. "Hopeful, not literally," groaned Falls. The deities and half-bloods just nodded their heads in agreement. "You okay, man?" Percy asked when he saw Grover's face. They looked at Grover to see that all the color had drained out of him, that in his nose was twitching. "Tell me, are they looking at you too?" "They are, aren't they?" "Yeah. Weird, huh? Do you think those socks would fit me?" asked Percy in a joking manner. "This is no time for joking around, seaweed brain," yelled Annabeth. "Not likely," Naruto replied, getting really freaked out. "I don't think they would even fit the fattest priest." "More like Gabe than anything else," thought Percy. "Not funny, you two. Not funny at all," Grover whined. "The satyr is right," came Athena's voice. "Mother, the satyr has a name, he is called Grover Underwood," shouted out Annabeth. "What is eating you?" Naruto asked. Grover only pointed to the old ladies. The old lady in the middle took out a huge pair of scissors, gold and silver, long-bladed, like shears. They heard Grover catch his breath. Just like everyone in the throne room. "We're getting on the bus," he told them. "Come on." "What?" Percy said. "It's 1,000 degrees in there." "Didn't stop you from going inside a volcano," snapped Annabeth. Percy had the decency to blush and look down at his shoes. "You actually like the heat, Grover?" Naruto asked, complained. "No, he would not like the heat," said Annabeth and Percy. They blushed and looked away from each other. Aphrodite squealed and shouted out, "Love is in the air." The other gods and goddesses just out of place and struggled it off. "Come on." He pried open the door and climbed inside, while the duo stayed back for a bit. "Are you stupid, seaweed brain kelphead?" shouted out Annabethalia. "When I get my hands on my boyfriend," threatened Falls, but was cut off by Zeus. Across the road, the old ladies were still watching them. The middle one cut the yarn, which they could hear that snip across 4 lanes of traffic. "Well, they are as good as dead," Ares laughed. "Shut up," screeched Falls. She then shot a powerful lightning bolt at the war god. He dodged but didn't see the second lightning bolt until it was too late. Ares blacked out due to pain, while the demigods and the other gods looked at Falls with widened eyes. Her 2 friends balled up the electric blue socks, leaving me wondering who they could possibly be for, probably for Bigfoot or the man in the moon. Naruto rolled his eyes and climbed into the bus. "Come on, let go see Grover before he pisses himself." "Grover knows that it marks the end of a life," said Annabeth to the other demigods. While the demigods just nodded their heads. At the rear of the bus, the driver wrenched a big chunk of smoking metal out of the engine compartment, the bus shuddered, and the engine roared back to life, and everyone cheered. "If they knew what they were actually cheering for, then they would be crying," said Athena. "Darn right," yelled the driver. He slapped the bus with his hat. "Everybody back on board." "Oh, just in time," Naruto drawled as he walked to the back with Percy. Once the bus got going, Percy got all feverish like he got the flu. Poseidon looked pained that his son might die in that dimension. While Thals worried about Naruto because that string that was just cut might be his. While Naruto started sweating and complaining about the heat. Language Naruto, all the goddesses shouted out. Grover was not any better, but he was chattering his teeth like he was cold. "Grover?" asked Percy. "Yeah? What are you not telling us?" The lot muttered everyone in the throne room besides Ares because he was knocked out still. Grover dabbed his forehead with his shirt sleeve. "Percy, what did you two see back at the fruit stand?" "Someone dying," groaned Hades. Some of the gods looked at Hades questioningly. The Lord of the Dead sighed, then said the underworld is too crowded. A few old ladies with way too much time on their hand. Naruto replied while putting a hand on his forehead and wiping off the sweat. "Yeah." Percy smirked but lost it at Grover's serious face. "Wait, they're not like Miss Dods, are they?" "Much worse, young one," whispered Hestia. The demigods looked kind of sad thinking about someone is going to die. But alas, that is a life of a mortal. The look he gave them made it seem worse. What could be worse? A lot of things, actually, croaked out the gods and goddesses. "Just tell me what you saw." The middle one took out her scissors and she cut the yarn. "Someone is doomed," sadly croaked Hestia with some tears in her eyes. Barry's eyes opened and his glance made its way to Thals before glaring at her with hate-filled eyes. Percy shrugged like it was nothing. Grover closed his eyes and made a gesture with his fingers that might have been crossing himself. But it wasn't. It was something else, something almost older. Very observant, smiled Athena. "Now that is odd." He said, "You saw her snip the cord." "Yeah. So?" Percy replied, getting the feeling like it was something big. "That seaweed brain," said Annabeth. "Well, sorry wise girl," smiled Percy. "Sea spawn," growled Athena. "Don't call my son that owlhead," growled Poseidon. "This is not happening," Grover mumbled. He started chewing at his thumb. "I don't want this to be like the last time." "What last time?" "My daughter got turned into a tree," snarled Zeus. "But she was never supposed to exist in the first place." Hera glared at Zeus. The boys asked, getting freaked out as much as Grover was now. "That's impossible," joked Percy. Everyone smiled at the son of Poseidon and focused back to the book. "Always 6th grade. They never get past 6th. Grover mumbled to himself again. "Grover," Percy said, because he was really starting to get scared. "What are you talking about?" "Let me walk you two home from the bus station. Promise me." "That is kind of creepy," smiled Apollo and Hermes. "Man are creepy, stupid, and weird," sneered Artemis. "Now little sis," laughed Apollo. "Don't call me that. How many eons do I have to remind you I was born first?" snarled Artemis. Apollo looked hurt but said nothing. Now it was Artemis's turn to feel ashamed and whispered sorry. Apollo looked happy now and shouted out, "It's okay, sister." This seemed like a strange request, but they promised he could. "Geez, Percy, never know you swung that way," laughed both Apollo and Hermes. Percy glared at them while a bright blush spread on his face. The son of Poseidon said, "Screw you." Apollo and Hermes said, "You have just proven our point now." Poseidon got off his throne and walked over to Percy. He patted his shoulder and said, "Percy, it's okay to be different." Percy just blushed harder and shouted out, "I am not gay." Annabeth glared at both gods and said, "You idiot, stop messing around with everything." Artemis and the other goddesses just nodded in agreement. "It is no problem, I am going over to his place anyway," Naruto replied. Is this like a superstition or something?" Percy asked, but got no answer. "Grover, that snipping of the yarn. Does that mean somebody is going to die?" He looked at the two mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flowers that would be best on their coffins. That is when the cogs of Naruto's mind started churning and rapidly. The things that have been happening lately and all the Greek mythology they had been learning finally caught up to him. Those 3 old crones were something that he paled at. "Oh crap." "What?" Percy said, freaked out that Naruto was scared now. "Niji was right, fate, or in this case fates do exist." Naruto replied, while Percy and Grover gawked at him. "This will be the last chapter for today," boomed Zeus. Athena and Annabeth looked as if Zeus kicked their puppy and so they began to protest. But Zeus was not finished because he thundered silence. The throne room went into a tense silence until it was broken by Thals. "So who wants to read?" questioned Thals. "I will," said Annabeth. "Okay, Annie," smiled Thalia. "Thals." "Don't call me Annie," angrily shouted Annabeth. "Enough, on with the story," thundered Zeus. "Do you think Zeus' ego can get any bigger?" questioned Poseidon. "Only time will tell," mocked Hades. "You said it, brother," laughed Poseidon. Chapter 4. Gabe is Puned and Grover is a what, said Annabeth while looking a little confused. The rest of bus ride they listened to Grover freak out to himself the whole way. "That must have been annoying," grumbled Thals and Thalia. They both smiled but said nothing afterwards. So it was not a surprise that when it was over that Grover had to go to the can. You see, when Grover get upset, his bladder act up. He is properly calling Chiron on a status report, said Annabeth confidently. So when Grover went to the bathroom at the bus station, the boys quickly got away. Genius, remarked Hermes. No, it is not, you dimwit, screamed out the goddesses in the throne room. While Annabeth was glaring at Percy for leaving Grover behind. Percy hailed a cab and they jumped in. The East 104th and 1st, Percy told the driver. While Naruto made the shadow clone hand sign. Such a nice boy, I wonder if he likes farming and cereal or can't have been Hades' son because he is so good, muttered Demeter. While Hades thought, dear gods, help my son against my sister mother-in-law. Percy looked at him oddly when nothing happened. What was that about? As the yellow cab drove them away from the bus station, Naruto replied, I made one outside. You know Grover will freak out as he had been about not being able to protect you. You got that right, seaweed brain, frowned Annabeth, but after a while smiled at Percy. Besides, I think it is time he knows what I can do. He properly does, everyone in the room said. Percy gave Naruto a small smile and said, you know you are going to give him a heart attack. Just one, not too big, smiled Percy. Seaweed brain, that was uncalled for, screamed out Annabeth. I was just kidding, wise girl, smiled Percy. Annabeth blushed while Athena glared daggers at the sea spawn as she called it. Naruto gave Percy a smirk as they traveled to his mom's apartment. Along the way, Percy told Naruto all about his mom. She is the best mom in the world, screamed Percy at the top of his lungs. Poseidon smiled dreamily, thinking about Sally Jackson. Truly a queen among women, thought the sea god. All Falls, Thalia, Nico, and Annabeth nodded their heads happily. Athena just smiled, thinking her favorite daughter has a great mother figure. My mom's name is Sally Jackson and she is the best person in the world. You got that right, said Falls Thalia. That also proves my theory that the best people have the rottenest luck. Percy said as Naruto nodded, having heard that from him a few weeks ago. The truth, said everyone in the throne room. XXXX. Grover got out of the bathroom and looked around for Percy and Naruto. He only saw Naruto with his arms crossed. Hey Naruto, where is Percy? He is going to freak out when he hears this, thought Annabeth. Everyone else just waited impatiently for the upcoming reaction of the satyr. He went home. Naruto replied, making Grover's eyes widen. Don't worry though, I am with him. That is going to confuse the poor dear, muttered Demeter. He deserves it, that disgrace of a satyr, grumbled Zeus. Father, will you quit blaming Grover about the decision I made? Cried out Thalia. All said nothing but nodded her head in agreement nonetheless. What? How can that be possible? You are right here. Grover freaked. Shadow clone Sange Thals. Grover, Mr. Brunner was right. Percy is not normal and in a sense, neither am I. You got that right, he is not normal, snorted out Laws. Why, questioned Percy. It's in the book, Kelphead, smiled Thals. Naruto explained, making Grover sweat under the blonde's gaze. Weird shit has been going on lately and it has been going on most of Percy's life. Me on the other hand, I think that stuff is a bit normal. You would think that, Naruto, thought Thals. The thing with people trying to kill you. Naruto then looked around them to see that the bus station was completely empty, everyone had left a while ago. I know I am not normal because I have powers that normal humans don't have. You got that right, Captain Obvious, laughed Thals. The other demigods just smiled and wished some of their other friends came to read. Remember that, Grover, because that helped me protect Percy like you want. Grover is going to be grateful to you for helping keep Seaweed Brain alive, smiled Annabeth. Hey, I am not that bad, am I, questioned Percy. Yeah, you are, Kelphead, said Thalia and Thals. Nico just smirked sadly but moved his mouth, saying you are on your own, man. He said nothing because you should never ever go against an argument with a woman. The end result is that you are going to lose badly. Naruto's form them faltered a bit before it went up in a hail of shadows flying into the nearby shadows. Grover had a look of pure shock on his face. No way. So he has figured it out, then questioned the gods and goddesses. I believe so, replied Thals. XXXX. The demigod duo made it to Percy's apartment and paid. Percy looked up at the apartment nervously and said, Naruto, are you sure want to come in? Smiley Gabe is a real jerk and he will not be any different to you. Naruto will be fine, but I can't say anything about Gabe, said Thals. Percy smiled but said nothing. Naruto smiled with a bit of annoyance. Yeah, Percy. You told me about your mom and all her history and I still can't figure why she is with this Gabe. He is so loyal and kind, thought Hestia. How the Hades can Hades be the father of this sweet young caring boy, demanded Demeter. Hades just glared at his sister mother-in-law again. Don't worry, I won't anger him much. Always be cunning, my son, fondly thought Hades. Uncle Hades, can I adopt Naruto please, begged Hermes. No, said Hades in an emotionless tone, but on the inside was grinning like a madman. I am getting a bad feeling about this. Percy said as they entered the building, hoping his mom would be home from work. No, she was not, sadly thought Percy, thinking back on that fateful day. but decided to listen more to see if anything changed in this dimension. Instead, Smelly Gabe was in the living room, playing poker with his buddies. The television blared ESPN. Chips and beer cans were strewn all over the carpet. Nope, same old, angrily thought Percy. Wow, it is worse than I expected. At least I agree with him, smiled Percy. The gods and goddesses looked disgusted but said nothing. Naruto thought with a deadpan expression. Hardly looking up, Gabe said around his cigar, so, you're home. Who is your loser friend? He is not a loser, he is my son. In anger, Hades thought. The other demigods thought the same thing and all of them became vocal about it. Like Thal's thinking, just wait until the girls back home hear about this, and started to giggle to herself. Or Nico thinking about Gabe is going to pay for insulting his older brother. Percy frowned and angrily thought how much of an asshole Gabe was. Next came Annabeth with strategies for making Gabe miserable in life. Then came time for Thalia with ways to violate. To describe some of the ways were not limited to getting his balls chopped off and getting chased by wildlife. Or even cutting off his manhood and choking him with it. Naruto. Where's my mom? Percy replied shortly. Properly trying to support this ugly piece of shit, snarled out Hades, Poseidon, Artemis, and surprisingly Aphrodite. Working, he said. You got any cash? That made Percy rolled his eyes. What, no, welcome back. Good to see you. How has your life been the last 6 months? Figures. A great example of a disgusting male, sneered out Artemis. Percy just nodded his head in agreement. Percy noticed that Gabe had put on weight. He looked like a tuskless walrus in thrift store clothes. Wow, that is so him, whispered Percy, then he smiled. He had about 3 hairs on his head, all combed over his bald scalp, as if that made him handsome or something. My eyes and ears, it burns, thought all individuals in the throne room. After a little while, so they can calm down from that traumatic event. Aphrodite shouted out, even I couldn't even possible make him presentable for the us girls to be interested in. So you wouldn't date him, questioned out Artemis. No way in Hades would I touch him, not even if he was the last male on earth, said a horror-filled voice of the love goddesses. The other goddesses just nodded their heads in agreement wholeheartedly. But Artemis continued on, asking, and why is that? Because I have at least some dignity and self-control, shuddered Aphrodite just thinking about it. Artemis just snorted, but in the back of her mind, the respect for Aphrodite went up a notch or two. But would never admit it to her face or other relatives ever. This guy managed the electronics mega mart in Queens, but he stayed home most of the time. Of course can't do anything, can he, thought everyone in the throne room, and then sighed. It was a wonder why he hadn't been fired long before. He just kept on collecting paychecks, spending the money on cigars that made Percy nauseous, and on beer, of course. Do you think Perseus was hit, questioned Hestia. If my son was hit, then that mortal will face my wrath, an infuriated Poseidon shouted out. Everyone just held their breath waiting for the book to explain. Always beer. The growl escaped the sea god with worry for his son and past lover. Whenever Percy was home, he expected him to provide his gambling funds. That's outrageous, disgusting, snarled out all the goddesses. The female demigods just nodded their heads in agreement. While the gods and rest of the demigods just stood quietly but had a look of anger in their eyes. He called it their guy secret. Meaning, if he told his mom, he would punch his lights out. The throne room shook violently, and the earth was suffering the worst natural disasters the world has experienced before. Like hurricanes, flash floods, earthquakes and tsunamis, to name a few, until a large enraged voice came. That disgusting mortal, how dare he touch my son, screamed out Poseidon. Zeus's voice came through the sound of his brother enragement. He gave commands to stop Poseidon's wrath and calm him down quickly before the world is a huge disaster zone, before the entire human population died. Hestia helped try and calm down Poseidon, boomed Zeus. Hestia disappeared in a flash of flames and tried to soothe her brother with a lullaby when they were in their father's stomach. The sea god faltered a bit but kept up his destructive rampage. Annabeth called out to Percy to try and help calm his dad or use his powers to negate some of his father's damages done to the earth. Due to his unbridled rage against Gabe and sadness for his son and his lover Sally. Hestia was working her magic on calming down one of her brothers. While Percy was trying his best to control the storms and disasters from reaching land. He was also trying to keep it in the oceans while the earthquakes happened, of course, but not as powerful as it could have been. After 20 minutes they finally had an exhausted Percy on the floor panting and a slightly calmed down sea god. Of course Naruto knew, as he had told him along the way. Naruto was not happy about that. Of course he wouldn't be, sighed Falls. She was thinking about how lonely she was because she was the only person from the book so far. I don't have any cash, Naruto heard Percy tell him, which made the man raise a greasy eyebrow. Ew, squealed Aphrodite. Shivers went through all the goddesses, thinking how horrible he must look and smell. Then some of them looked sick with slight green faces that looked like they were going to throw up. Percy had told Naruto that the man could smell money but not much else, which was very odd. "Hey, do you think he is a human hellhound hybrid?" joked Thalia. Balls just smiled while Percy laughed and Annabeth just shook her head with a smile on her face. "You took a taxi from the bus station," he said. "Probably paid with a 20. Got 7 bucks in change." "That must be the only logical thing this Gabe said so far," snorted Athena. "Somebody expects to live under this roof, he ought to carry his own weight." "He is only a child," scolded Hestia. The occupants in the room just nodded their heads in agreement. "Am I right, Eddie?" "This is repulsive," whispered out Annabeth with tears in her eyes for her best friend Percy. The other demigods just frowned but wholeheartedly agreed. Eddie, the super of the apartment building, looked at Percy with a twinge of sympathy. "Come on, Gabe," he said. "The kid just got here." "At least he is slightly better than that pig of a man," Gabe commented. Demeter. "No, he said he just got here, so that means he will pay money sooner or later," said Athena. "Well, anything is better than that pig of a mortal," sneered Artemis. "I wholeheartedly agree, little sis," smiled Apollo. Artemis gave a small smile but covered it up by a scowl and screamed out, "I am not your little sister, I helped deliver you into this world." "Am I right?" Gabe repeated. "No, you are wrong, mortal," thought all the immortals in the room. All the half-bloods just thought the same as their parents. Eddie scowled into his bowl of pretzels. The other two guys, Naruto noticed, passed gas in harmony. "I think I am going to hurl," said all the goddesses. Except Artemis, because she had spent time with pigs, assholes, boy, or even bastards at some point. Or as she called them for better purpose, a fine example of a disgusting males. But the moon goddess looked a little green. "Fine," Percy said. He dug a wad of dollars out of his pocket and threw the money on the table. "I hope you lose." "So do we," thought gods and demigods alike. Before anything could be said or done, Naruto put a hand on Percy's shoulder and the money. "What are you going to do?" questioned everyone in the throne room. Percy looked at Naruto oddly before he noticed the gleam in Naruto's eye. Oh, Gabe was so screwed. How ran through all the minds in the throne room. "How about I play? You can take my money if I lose," Naruto said. Percy smirked, he knew from experience. "I wonder how badly he beat you." "Hopeful not too bad," mocked Annabeth. Percy just blushed and thought he properly kicked my butt 6 ways to Sunday. And a lot of others at school too, that Naruto never lost at card games and he didn't even know how to play some of them. "That is talent," smiled Hermes. Everyone thinking how good their lives would be if they had that luck. "I wonder if he would beat Chiron at Pinnacle. If he does, then Titch herself must favor him," muttered Dionysus. "What? A brat like you?" Gabe said, eyeing Naruto. "He is not a brat, you tuskless walrus," snarled out Thals. "Afraid of being beat by a kid?" Naruto smirked. "Besides, I got $100, are you going to pass up on that?" "I wonder where he got all that much he could get," said Apollo. "Well, his father is the god of wealth," smirked Hades. Demeter just rolled her eyes at her brother's son-in-law. Poseidon just sighed and said, "Can we please get back to the story so I can find out what happens to my son and Gabe's fate?" That got Gabe's attention. Of course it did, thought everyone in the throne room. Even though he was mad, Naruto did have money. He would win it from this brat and rub it in his face. "I don't think it is going to turn out that way, mortal," sneered out Hera. While Hestia just nodded her head agreeing with her sister. "Fine, sit down and play. He is so going to regret that," smiled Thals. "Good." Naruto sat down and leaned over to Percy. "This will be over soon." "Very soon," smirked Thals. Zeus looked at his daughter and frowned at her relationship with the son of Hades. "You should get settled in, it is your place after all." "Oh, how I wish I had a son like that," all the goddesses said except Artemis. She often thought about have a child but brushed it off because her hunters, especially Zoe, she considered her children. As the game began, Percy nodded and left. He hoped Gabe would so lose to Naruto. "Well, do you think he would lose to a walking beer can?" mocked Thals. Annabeth and Thalia just smiled and high-fived Thals. Annabeth on the right and Thalia on the left hand. Thalia just thought her book self was awesome and couldn't wait for her appearance. He slammed the door to his room, which really wasn't his room. "It's not," threatened in anger Poseidon. During school months, it was Gabe's study. "What in God's name does he study?" shouted out everyone in the throne room. Then they looked at Percy for an answer to their question. Percy just struggled and said nothing, absolute nothing. All the people in the room just chuckled and began to listen to Annabeth read. The man didn't study anything in there except old car magazines, but Gabe loved shoving Percy's stuff in the closet. "Of course he act like an overgrown bully," angrily snapped Hestia. The council of gods just nodded their heads in agreement surprisingly. While Hera gave a small smile thinking they are becoming a big happy family finally. Leaving his muddy boots on my windowsill and doing his best to make the place smell like his nasty cologne and cigars and stale beer. If he also hit Sally, then heads are going to roll. Ancient rules be damn dangerous, thought Poseidon. Percy dropped his suitcase on the bed. Home sweet home. Oh joy. As he thought about other stuff, he didn't know how much time had passed. Properly only 2 hours or so, said Hades. Why would that be, questioned Demeter. Because women poker games should on average only last that long, smirked Hades. Oh, muttered Demeter while she blushing madly. The rest of the occupants just snickered and giggled softly. He walked to his door in time to hear two things. Gabe's crying out. Ah, sweet music to my ears, smiled Percy. Which he knew from experience that it was the cry of a loser. He is a loser, shouted everyone in the throne room. And his mom calling him. Ah, Sally, dreamily thought Poseidon. It seemed that she was home now. Which is good, smiled Hera, thinking about how good of relationship a mother and son shared. How she wished she could share a relationship like Sally and Percy shared. Hera was a little saddened because her sons didn't treat her like a mother. For one, Ares was not loving because he loves bloodshed and also a god of war. But Hephaestus was the closest she would properly ever come close to that relationship, but she blew it up big time. She threw her son Hephaestus from Olympus when he was a baby when she thought he was imperfect. But as an epilogue she made Aphrodite marry him. Worst mistake of the century, she truly loves Hephaestus as a son and deep down she wants to apologize for all the horrible things she had done to him. I think this day just got better. She opened the door and looked at Percy with a smile on her face. Oh, Percy. Ah, how sweet, squealed Aphrodite. She hugged him tightly. I can't believe it. You've grown since Christmas. Now that is a caring mother, snarled Hephaestus, looking at Hera in a longing sort of way. But looked back to the book and remained silent. Thanks, Mom. Percy said. Her red, white and blue Sweet on America uniform smelled like the best things in the world. Chocolate, licorice and all the other stuff she sold at the candy shop in Grand Central. Candy, thought all the demigods. She'd brought him a huge bag of free samples, the way she always did when he came home. You're lucky, man, laughed Apollo and Hermes. Artemis just glared at them both, her twin and half-brother. So who is your friend out there beating everyone at poker? My son, smiled Hades. Oh, that is Naruto Uzumaki. He is a good friend from school. Percy replied. Good to know you have a friend. It sure is, smiled the females in the room while the males just nodded their heads. Sally Jackson said softly as she hugged him again. Mama boy, leered Ares. Hera just glared at Ares with disappointment. Hera sneered, Ares, you still live with your parents, so I wouldn't talk if I was you. Yes, madam, gulped Ares. Now on with the story, smiled Hera. Percy then began to tell her all about his school year at Yancy Academy. It seriously was not as bad as the headmaster said it was. It wasn't, joked Annabeth. Oh, shut it, wise girl, joked back Percy. He didn't really tell her much about the museum because it still freaked him out. I still remember it sometimes because it stands for the beginning of my demigod life, stated Percy. It's okay, seaweed brain, smiled Annabeth while had a small blush on her pretty face. I know, wise girl, blushed Percy. Oh, will you two quit, will the lovey-dovey stuff, leered Ares. Aphrodite snapped at him, screeching out, no, keep on going, dears, don't listen to Ares. While Poseidon and Athena glared at each other, thinking it's his or her fault that their son-daughter are falling in love with each other. Hestia just coughed to get everyone's attention and suggested that we finish reading. Did something scare you? Yep, some dangerous monsters, smiled Nico. That is the normal life of a demigod, laughed Percy with a smile on his face. No, Mom. Percy lied. Don't lie to your mother, snapped Hera. Sorry, replied Percy. Zeus coughed and questioned, could we please continue, wife? Hera just nodded her head and now glared at Zeus, thinking about how unfaithful he is. But whatever happened seemed to revolve around both me and Naruto. He said, making her eyes widen. She knows, whispered the gods. Some were giving Poseidon a small glare for giving their secret away. But Poseidon waved his hand and said, clear-sighted mortal. So, Percy found a friend like himself. Everyone smiled because it is good to have friends to back you up if you get into trouble. That is good because if he ever got to that world, he would really need a friend. That is right, smiled the demigods. This is Jackson, thought to herself. From the other room, Gabe yelled, hey, Sally, how about some bean dip, huh? Figures, even if he is beaten, he is still a jerk. Yep, said everyone. Percy thought while grinding his teeth. Like everyone the throne room was doing right now. Oh, never mind. Your brat of a friend got it for us. Came Gabe's voice again. Thanks, Naruto, thought Percy. Percy gave a weak smile when he heard that. I so owe you for this, Naruto. I have a surprise for you, Sally said. Oh, I love surprises, said Hermes, Apollo, and Aphrodite. We're going to the beach. Percy's eyes widened. Montauk. Poseidon smiled dreamily and sighed. Free night, same cabin. When? She smiled. As soon as I get changed. He couldn't believe it. They hadn't been to Montauk the last 2 summers because Gabe said there wasn't enough money. Yeah, because he drinks or loses it all anyways, sneered the females. He then looked at her hopeful and said, "Can Naruto come too?" "Ah, how sweet," smiled Aphrodite. Percy just blushed because he realizes how Aphrodite looks like Annabeth. "He can pay, I am sure," after the beating he gave Gabe. "Properly kicked his ass, good," smirked Thal's. Percy smiled at her and nodded his head, hoping that he did. She laughed and nodded her head. "I don't see the problem with that." "Wow, she is so nice, hey Uncle P, you pick good women," shouted out Hermes and Apollo. Well, the others besides Zeus, because he is too proud, nodded their heads in agreement. But that they left his room and walked out to see a steaming Gabe and a smirking Naruto. "Oh, he just got owned," laughed Percy, Hermes, and Apollo. The others in the throne room just rolled their eyes but smiled at Percy. Gabe's friends were looking at Naruto like he was the poker god. "Well, he is a half-god," said Hades. Gabe looked at them and regained his composure and said, "You were in there a long time." So screamed the females in the room. Apollo put his hands up and said, "Now ladies." The females just glared at the sun god and screamed back to shut up. "Oh, we were just talking about the trip," Sally said happily. "He will properly try and deny you from going, spat Artemis." "You're right," said Percy. Babe's eyes got small. "Just like his brain," properly smiled Athena. "No, owlhead, he doesn't have a brain to begin with," came Poseidon. "Who asked you, fish face?" hotly said Athena. Aphrodite just grinned and began to watch the show unfold. "The trip? You mean you were serious about that?" "No, they weren't, they were planning on staying at home all summer for your enjoyment," snarled Artemis. Percy smiled gratefully at her and the goddess just nodded her head back. Apollo looked at the two questionable but said nothing. "I knew it," Percy muttered. "He won't let us go." "He better," threatened Poseidon. "Of course he will," his mom said evenly. "Your stepfather is just worried about money." "Yeah, money that is yours and Percy," said Poseidon. The demigods in the room nodded their heads in agreement. "That's all. Besides," she added, "Gabriel won't have to settle for bean dip. I'll make him enough. 7-layer dip for the whole weekend." "This is making me a little hungry," said Ares. Apollo and Hermes nodded their heads, agreeing with their half-brother. "Guacamole. Sour cream. The works." "Ah, bribery," fondly said Hermes. Babe softened a bit. "So this money for your trip, it comes out of your clothes budget?" "Ooh, oh, not the cloth," screamed out Aphrodite while whimpering a little. "Right, because I lost most of mine to this brat." "Like you would pay even if you won," snapped Percy. The females nodded their heads. While the men were thinking, what a disgusting mortal, maybe it is a monster. The fat man said while jutting his pudgy finger at Naruto, who had an innocent look on his face. "Yes, always look innocent," smiled Hermes. The others in the throne room just chuckled at Hermes' antics. "Yes, honey," Sally said. "And you won't take my car anywhere but there and back." "Maybe a little detour," innocently said Percy, while the other demigods just grinned. "We'll be very careful." "Yeah, right, gonna blow it up just to see this mortal's reaction," snorted Zeus. Babe scratched his double chin. "Ew, that's so disgusting," thought the goddesses and demigoddesses. "Maybe if you hurry with that 7-layer dip, and maybe if the kid apologizes for interrupting my poker game." "What, he just asked you a simple question and you also forced him to fund your poker addiction," shouted out everyone in the throne room. "Maybe if I kick you in your soft spot," Percy thought. "Do it, seaweed brain," whispered Annabeth. "Come on, Kelphead, what are you waiting for?" smiled Thalia. "And make you sing soprano for a week." The guys in the room covered up their manhoods and shivered just thinking about it. While the Hera looked thoughtful at her unfaithful husband. Zeus paled instantly when he caught sight of Hera's thoughtful look. He looked to his mom and it was a silent agreement that he had to be nice to Gabe if this was going to work. "Must have been hard for you, said Nico. Percy smiled and said, "It was my little cousin." Nico screamed out, "I am not little." "I'm sorry," Percy muttered. "I'm really sorry I interrupted your incredibly important poker game. Please go back to it right now." "You can detect sarcasm throughout this whole sentence," sang Thals. All the other individuals in the room just thought for a moment and nodded their heads, agreeing with Thals. Abe narrowed his eyes, trying to detect sarcasm in what Percy said. "If he can't detect that sarcasm, then he is a bigger idiot than I thought everyone except Percy himself. The reason is that he knew what would happen because it already did." "Yeah, whatever." Wow went through everyone's head. He then turned to Naruto. "No more for you. Go away." "He just got owned by a 12-year-old boy," laughed Percy and the rest of the demigods. The gods just shook their heads and thought, "Are we that childish?" Naruto just shrugged and walked over to Percy and his mom. "Oh, Naruto, would you like to come with us?" she asked. "Ah, how sweet," commented the goddesses. The males just struggled their shoulders and thought, "I will never understand girls." Sure. Are you sure you want someone like me on board?" "Yes, you are Percy's friend after all, so you must be a good kid." "Yeah, right," giggled Thals. While gods and demigods alike just looked at her confused. Dods then said Naruto is more powerful than Percy and attracts more monsters. The gods, goddesses and demigoddess nodded their heads in understanding. They began to listen to the book again with newfound interest. Sally replied, making Gabe rolled his eyes. Okay then. I hope you don't mind me paying for my stuff since I now have quite a bit of money. I wonder how much, thought everyone in the throne room. Naruto said, pocketing his money, which was about $500. Wow, exclaimed the demigods, and the immortals just looked impressed. I wonder if he could clean out all the money in a casino, thought Hermes and Apollo. He smirked when he heard Gabe complain about having to pay for Naruto's trip. Well, technically your friend's money could pay for their trip and he could spend your money elsewhere, said Annabeth. Thank you. Sally said with a smile because she heard it too. She's so sweet, squealed Aphrodite. Poseidon grinned fondly and whispered, that is the reason why I was drawn to her. Once we get to Montauk, we'll talk more about whatever you've forgotten to tell me, okay? Well, she is smart. I wonder how fish brain here got Sally, muttered Athena. Poseidon glared at her and said it was lovebird brain. Oh, that is sweet, squealed out Aphrodite again, making the people in the room cover their ears. She said to Percy. Naruto just knew that he told his mom about a little of what happened. Not the whole truth but also not a lie, I like it, smiled Hermes and Apollo. Oh Naruto, do we need to go to your place for you to pack? Shadow travel is the best powers to have ever, shouted out Nico, while Hades smiled at his son. Before Gabe could complain, Naruto replied, nah, I got my stuff with me. Since I hung out at Percy's dorm a lot, I hardly ever went home to my apartment, which is the halfway point from here to school. Well, that is convent, said Percy. Percy also wondered if Naruto ever watched over him when we were separate. Oh okay then, Mrs. Jackson said, thinking that Naruto probably left his stuff somewhere near here. If he is a ninja, then doesn't he have it on him, questioned Apollo. The room became silent, not even a cricket chirp. Apollo looked around, but his eyes landed on Artemis, his twin. She had a shocked look on her face. Finally, after a couple seconds, she shouted out, who are you and where have you done with my brother? Apollo just stuck out his tongue out at her. Hermes whispered to the demigods and said, watch this in 3, 2, 1, and 0. The retaliation of an anger Artemis was a sharp silver arrow to her brother's face. The room was silent for a moment, then laughter filled the one silent room. After the gods and demigods alike calmed down, Thal said, oh, and to answer your question, Apollo, he would have his stuff in the form of storage seals. She then gave Percy a smile and went to make the dip for the fat dip. An hour later, they were all ready to go. Get out of there and leave that horrible mortal, Sally shouted Poseidon and all of the other goddesses. Athena scowled, thinking how she agreed with her rival. But shrugged her shoulders because when you are talking about Gabe, even the bitterest rivals can get along. Naruto had a backpack on now, and Sally wondered where it had come from. Seals fondly smiled Thals while the others in the room looked at her questionable but said nothing. Percy just smiled, if only you knew mom. Babe watched as Naruto and Percy put all the bags in the car. The ugly man groaned about losing his wife's cooking and then his car all weekend, which, unlike him, was cool. Very, said Percy, but thought back on the fate of the poor Camaro. Stupid bull man, thought Percy. It was a '78 Camaro. Not a scratch on this car, brain boy, poker brat, he warned them as they loaded the last bag. Not one little scratch. Naruto just gave him a saluted as the fat man lumbered back in the apartment. Suddenly a rainbow appeared in the throne room and a voice came through. It was Iris, goddess of rainbows and minor goddess of messengers to the gods. My lords and ladies, Iris said. What do you want, Iris, questioned the Olympians. Well, it is about the story you are currently reading, answered Iris. Well, come on then, what is it, boomed Zeus, growing impatient. Well, in the battles in the series will be shown in the rainbow like a movie as the book is being read. It will also be in the person's mind who reading the book so they are not complaining if they are reading fairies cough. The gods nodded their heads and said thank you, Iris, for the message. Iris said, you're welcome, my lords and ladies, and the rainbow disappeared just as it had appeared. He knew that Gabe really pissed Percy off and he now understood why. Anyone would if they had a nose and half of a brain, muttered Athena. The others in the room smirked how funny Athena can be and how she is right as always. He was getting pissed at this guy as well. Kick his ass, Naruto, shouted everyone in the throne room with a smile on their faces. He then say Percy make that odd gesture that Grover did on the bus, and whatever he did worked because as soon smelly Gabe was in the doorway, the screen door slammed shut and probably sent the man flying. Good job, kid, laughed Hermes and Apollo, smiling at Percy. Percy blushed when Annabeth grabbed his hand. Athena glared at the son of Poseidon with fury and it looked like she wanted to throw a dagger or a sharp pointy objects at her rival's son. Athena thought, how dare that spawn of Poseidon bewitch my favorite daughter into liking him. The two boys quickly got in the car and Percy told his mom to step on it as they didn't want to feel Gabe's wrath. Percy flinched thinking about how his mom would get gone through with that pig. After a bit, Naruto could not help but laugh at what he was happened. Though, that weird gesture Percy used had energy similar to chakra. "Wait, what is chakra anyways?" shouted out Apollo. Chakra is a mixture of spiritual and physical energies within the body and can do amazing feats that would likely be impossible for anyone else, said Thales. Athena and Annabeth looked interested but remained silent for the time being because she would have to talk to Thales or better yet Naruto when he comes here. Odd. XXXX. Once they got there, Naruto smiled as he loved places like this. They set their stuff in the cabin that they got and messed around till it was dark out. "Nu, you have to party," exclaimed Apollo and Hermes. "You do realize that is a party in their eyes at that age, idiot," snapped Artemis. "Oh, relax sis, I was just kidding," smiled Apollo. Artemis just glared coldly at her twin but said nothing. They were currently sitting around a small fire, roasting hot dogs and marshmallows. "Oh, I love marshmallows," said Percy. Nico and Thalia just nodded their heads in agreement with their cousin. Annabeth just rolled her eyes but thought marshmallows are good. "Mom, what was my father like?" "Oh, he wants to learn about his real father," squealed Aphrodite. Ares just groaned while Aphrodite just glared at in which he paled. Percy asked with some courage. "He was kind, Percy," she said. "Tall, handsome, and powerful. But gentle, too. You have his black hair, you know, and his green eyes." "He really does," said everyone once everyone had a closer look at Percy and Poseidon. Poseidon smiled proudly at his son and Percy smiled back. She fished a blue jelly bean out of her candy bag. "I wish he could see you, Percy. He would be so proud." "I am, and I also wish I could see our children, and we are always proud of our children, no matter what," Poseidon said. Everyone else nodded their heads in agreement in what the sea god said. Percy looked a little sad at that. Naruto thought that the kid was thinking about how his father would be proud of him with all that happened. "Little Ms. Drama Queen happened," scowled Poseidon while pointing to Zeus. Zeus's face became bright red in anger and was about to yell at his brother when Hera slapped him. She smiled sweetly and said, "Honey, enough, we are going to read this last chapter." Zeus looked a little scared and could only nod his head unless he wants to taste his wife's wrath later. "How old was I?" Percy asked. "I mean when he left." "As soon as you were born," sadly said Poseidon. Percy just grinned at his dad but turned his attention to the book again. She watched the flames. "He was only with me for one summer, Percy. Right here at this beach. This cabin. But he knew me as a baby." "No, honey. He knew I was expecting a baby, but he never saw you. He had to leave before you were born," she said and then looked to Naruto, who had been silent for the conversation. "Naruto, what are your parents like?" "Alive and well," smiled Thales. Naruto chuckled a bit but it was hollow. "I am an orphan. I never really knew my parents. But I was given some stuff of my father's. He had a journal that described my mom to be a fiery and tomboyish reed. She loved pranks as much as I do." "Do you think she is my child or that Hades has good taste in women?" fondly said Hermes. Well, Apollo just nodded at his half-brother's words. "And she was also a very caring person. I was told she died in childbirth." "That is sad, a good woman dying in childbirth without getting to know their son," said Hera and surprisingly Artemis. "Now I heard that my dad was the best fighter around and an all-around nice guy." "Who are you and what happened to my heartless brother?" scowled Demeter with a hint of amusement. Hades just rolled his eyes but grinned. "Though if what I read is right, my mom wore the pants in that relationship." The haha Hades being laughed. The gods and goddesses expect Hades, who was blushing while cursing at his family. The demigods just looked at Hades in shock and disbelief. Artemis also smiled and thought she would be a great huntress. That made Percy chuckle a bit and his mom had a big smile on her face. "I am sorry about that," Sally said. "Who is taking care of you?" "No one, because he is a bad," smirked Apollo and Hermes. Thales just shook her head and laughed. Thales said, "Well, he does live with his dad and also camp Half-Blood in the summer." All the gods and goddesses glanced envious at Hades but said nothing. "Don't be. My grandfather was taking care of my before he died." "Wait a minute, I thought Naruto got raised by himself," said Apollo. Naruto said, not wanting to tell them that he was killed. "But I have been doing pretty well on my own anyway." "Like a badass," smiled Thales. While Zeus looked shocked at his daughter and Thalia just looked awestruck. Then Naruto had a sad look. He didn't know if his mom even wanted him around. "Of course she did," said Aphrodite. Everyone looked confused, but Aphrodite said it was just a feeling. The others in the throne room just went back to reading while Aphrodite just thought on what these feelings were. He didn't think he could handle being alone like Naruto. "Are you going to send me away again?" "She has to, I am afraid," said all the goddesses. Percy asked her. "To another boarding school." She pulled a marshmallow from the fire. "I don't know, honey." "She is so caring," said Hephaestus while glancing at his mother. Hera had the decency to lower her head down in shame for the stuff she did to Hephaestus all those eons ago. Her voice was heavy. I think we'll have to do something. Because you don't want me around." "Perseus Jackson," everyone shouted at the son of Poseidon. Who blushed because it was the moment he wished he could take back on what he said to his mom. But he regretted the words as soon as they were out. "But," said everyone. Her eyes welled with tears. She took his hand, squeezed it tight. "Oh, Percy, no. I have to, honey. For your own good. I have to send you away." This made Naruto quirk an eyebrow. Okay, the way she is saying this means she knows something like Grover and Mr. Brunner. "She does," said everyone in the throne room. "Because I'm not normal," Percy suddenly said. "You say that as if it's a bad thing, Percy. But you don't realize how important you are." "She right, you know," said Annabeth, but blushed and looked away from Percy. Percy smiled at Annabeth and looked at the book again with a small blush on his face. "I thought Yancy Academy would be far enough away. I thought you'd finally be safe." "Safe from what?" "Oh, anger, immortals and monsters," smiled Nico, Annabeth, and Thalia. Percy just shook his head and Thals just laughed. Percy asked though when he locked eyes with her, all the memories of weird shit happening to him had surfaced. Before anything else was said, Naruto cut in. "Percy, not being normal is not that bad. I mean, look at me. I have this powers and I am fine." "A lot of powers, that is for sure," said Thals. The gods and demigods just looked questionable at Thals, but she just said it's in the book. Mrs. Jackson looked at him oddly and he sighed knowing that he would have to show her. He held out his hand and swirling ball of energy formed in his hand. "Interesting, it describes he can control air and maybe other elements," said Athena. All the others looked interested as well and paid more attention to the book. Percy's eyes widened and said, "You never showed that one to me, only those shadow clones." "Shadow? Could he be just like Percy, a son of the big three?" "Right as always, Sally," said Annabeth, Nico, Percy, and Thalia. Sally thought as she eyed the ball before it dissipated. She gave Naruto a grateful look and continued on. "I've tried to keep you as close to me as I could," she said to Percy. "They told me that was a mistake." "It is because of monsters' attack," said some of the gods. But after some glares from the goddesses backed down. "But there's only one other option, Percy, the place your father wanted to send you. And? I just can't stand to do it. It is a parent's hardest decision to let their children face the world on their own," said Hestia and Hera. "My father wanted me to go to a special school. No, a summer camp, and it is called Camp Half-Blood," said the demigods. "Not a school," she said softly. "A summer camp, and apparently it is a place you both need to go to." "Yeah, they sure do," said Thals. Both boys just looked at her oddly. Naruto never heard anything about a camp in the letter he got from his dad. "But there is no cabin for Hades at camp," said Nico. "Maybe there is a cabin in that scroll of his," said Percy. Nico just nodded his head and said, "That is pretty logical, Percy, don't hurt your brain too much." Percy just huffed and looked away from his cousin. "I'm sorry, Percy," she said, seeing the look in his eyes. "But I can't talk about it. I couldn't send you to that place. It might mean saying goodbye to you for good." All of the goddesses looked sympathetic at the book. "For good? But if it's only a summer camp," Percy trailed off as he saw the tears in his mom's eyes. "The woman's second most powerful weapon," said all of the gods and male demigods. The goddesses and demigoddesses just smiled. XXXX. It was storming out, but both boys were sound asleep and they were having the same exact dream. "That is kind of creepy," laughed Percy, Nico, and Thalia. It was storming on the beach and three beautiful animals, a white horse. "Poseidon," said the gods and goddesses, and Poseidon smirked. "The golden eagle." "Oh, great mama's boy or drama queen, Lord Zeus," said Hades and Poseidon. Well, the other gods and goddesses besides Zeus laughed. "And pitch black raven." Hades, said the gods and goddesses, and Hades smiled. "We're trying to kill each other at the edge of the surf." Well, the raven was not doing much. It just hovered in midair, watching the two fight and only with a mild look of interest. Of course it would attack at certain times. The eagle swooped down and slashed the horse's muzzle with its huge talons. The horse reared up and kicked at the eagle's wings. The raven then decided to claw at the eagle a bit before doing the same to the horse. "Staying neutral, Hades," said the gods and goddess. As they fought, the ground rumbled and a monstrous voice chuckled somewhere beneath the earth, goading the animals to fight harder. Kronos shuddered the immortals in the room and the light in the room dimmed slightly. The other gods and goddesses just glanced at Zeus. But they saw Zeus slumped in his throne and closed his blue eyes before sighing. Percy and Naruto ran toward them, knowing they had to stop them from killing each other, but the problem was that they were running in slow motion. "Stupid powers," said Percy and the other demigods. They knew they would be too late. They saw the eagle dive down, its beak aimed at the horse's wide eyes, while the raven decided to help out its flying companion. "Oh Uncle Poseidon, you just got double-teamed," said Apollo. Poseidon waved his hand and splashed Apollo's face with 10 gallons of Arctic water. The two boys had enough and screamed, "No." Thankfully it was just a dream and they woke up with a start like it was a nightmare. "Sometimes dreams are nightmares," said Athena. Annabeth just nodded her head agreeing with her mother. Outside, it really was storming. "No duh, Zeus is having a fight with his brothers," said all of the goddesses. "The kind of storm that cracks trees and blows down houses." "Wow, strong storm, that means Zeus is really pissed off or his everyday self," remarked Poseidon and Hades. Zeus glared at them and said, "I am going to kill you someday." The brothers laughed and said, "We love you too, brother." Zeus bellowed out silence. There was no horse, eagle, or raven on the beach, just lightning making false daylight and 20-foot waves pounding the dunes like artillery. "Now Poseidon is furious. What is going on? A war?" questioned the gods. Athena thought about how her father and her uncles could be furious about to start a war about. Though everyone once in a while they saw that the lightning was covered in black fire, or sometimes they also saw steaming hot water fly up into the sky, but it was a sickly black color. "Geez, Dad and Uncle P and Uncle H, are you at war with Dad?" questioned Apollo and Hermes. Ares also wanted to know because he absolutely loved war because he is a war god. This shit never happens. But the next thunderclap, Percy's mom awoke. She sat up, eyes wide, and said, "Hurricane." Percy knew that was crazy. Long Island never sees hurricanes this early in the summer. "Uncle P, how could you forget about the time of the year?" mocked said Apollo. Poseidon waved his hand again and another 10 gallons of Arctic water splashed on his face. But the ocean seemed to have forgotten. "Why Uncle P, why?" wailed Hermes and Apollo. Artemis snapped at the two immature gods, saying, "Will you two shut up for 2 minutes?" There was a silence in the throne room for 2 minutes and Artemis asked the question on what they were doing. Hermes and Apollo said, "Victorious, we win sis, we have stayed silent for 2 whole long terrible minutes." Artemis felt the need to bang her head on her throne while saying stupid 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 over and over again. Over the roar of the wind, he heard a distant bellow, an angry, tortured sound that made his hair stand on end. "Wonder what monster that is," thought all of the gods and goddesses. Then a much closer noise, like mallets in the sand. A desperate voice, someone yelling. "Pounding on our cabin door. Hopeful it is a monster so we can have some action," shouted out Ares. The gods and goddesses just shook their heads and sighed at the antics of the war god. Mrs. Jackson sprang out of bed in her nightgown and threw open the lock. Grover stood framed in the doorway against a backdrop of pouring rain. "Properly gave Sally a heart attack," said Annabeth. While Thalia and Nico agreed with Annabeth because rule 1 is never oppose Annabeth's logic. The reason is that you will most definitely lose. But Percy gets it because he lets Annabeth come up with the plan. But he wasn't exactly Grover. "Properly in his true form with hooves and horns in all its glory," smiled Falls. "Searching all night," he gasped. "What were you two thinking?" "They weren't like always for Percy and sometimes for Naruto," said Falls. While the females just nodded their head and the guys just sighed. Mrs. Jackson looked at them in terror, not scared of Grover, but of why he'd come. "To bring demigods to camp," said Athena and Annabeth. Athena just smiled at her daughter proudly while her daughter simply blushed. They boy were too shocked at the moment to register that, however. "I thought Naruto would get it," said Annabeth while Athena nodded her head. "Sorry, but Naruto was a knucklehead for a while and sometimes he still is," remarked Falls. "Because, instead of normal legs, Grover had legs that were like an animal's, sort of like a donkey or maybe a goat." "I knew it," exclaimed Annabeth. Percy just put his hands on her shoulders and whispered, "We have never doubted you, wise girl." Annabeth blushed bright red but snuggled in closer to Percy. Athena glared at our favorite son of the sea god with fury. "Percy," she said, shouting to be heard over the rain. "What happened at school? What didn't you tell me?" "Ozukai aloi theoi," Grover yelled. "Language Satyr, do not speak my name like that," boomed Zeus. While Hera just slapped him on his face and said, "Will you shut up already, we know you hate that satyr because of your illegitimate daughter did not reach camp." Zeus just huffed but remained silent. "It's right behind me. Didn't you tell her?" "What is?" questioned the gods and goddesses. All the demigods just smiled but remained silent and watching for the reactions of the immortals in the room. "You mean the kindly one you blabbed about or the old crones who are the fates?" "Now Sally will freak out but will try her hardest to save Percy and Naruto," said Annabeth. Percy, Thalia, Thals, and Nico agreed with her. Naruto shouted above the noise, making Percy's mom widen her eyes in horror. She grabbed her purse, tossed Percy and Naruto a rain jacket and said, "Get to the car. All of you. Go." "They are on their way to camp, Half-Blood," yelled Hermes and Apollo. But was silenced by a couple of silver arrows sailed through the air and almost hit them. Artemis just smiled while cleaning her bow and looking innocently at the others in the throne room. Grover ran for the Camaro but he wasn't running, exactly. He was trotting, shaking his shaggy hindquarters, and suddenly his story about a muscular disorder in his legs made sense to me. That would explain how he could run so fast and still limp when he walked. Good observation, Naruto, said Athena, and Annabeth nodded her head, agreeing with her mother. Yep, we have entered the Twilight Zone. Did we mention we love this kid, said Apollo and Hermes. Artemis just sighed and wished some of her hunters were here, namely Zoe and Phoebe. Naruto mumbled. But what is coming after us? He never got an answer because Grover quickly got in the car, not hearing him. He sighed and got in, going with the flow. Suddenly there was a bright flash of light in the throne room, and when it died down was a cloaked figure and 2 hunters. Now who are you and why have you disrupted our important meeting, boomed Zeus. The 2 hunters looked baffled and nervous in the presence of an irritated Zeus. Artemis intervened because she didn't want 2 dyed hunters if she could help it. Especially her oldest hunter and best friend Zoe Nightshade. The lieutenant of her hunters for 2 millennia. The second hunter was identified as Phoebe, one of the last older hunters she had. But thankfully they said nothing, fearing that it would make Zeus anger, which the moon goddess was thankful. While Percy and the other demigods were speechless because here standing before them was Zoe Nightshade. The one that was turned into a constellation called the Huntress when she faced her father Atlas. Percy was the first one out of the demigods that came back to reality and whispered out Zoe. Zoe saw Percy staring at her and glared hatefully at him. Before questioning Percy by saying, "What does thy want, boy?" Percy just blushed, then looked away and shuddering nothing. Zoe bowed to her mistress and said, "What does Milady want?" Artemis smiled fondly at Zoe before saying to her 2 hunters, "We are reading a book about a young hero from another dimension." Phoebe snorted and said, "Just what I always wanted to read about, an ungrateful boy." Artemis said, "That's enough, Zoe and Phoebe." Both hunters bowed, then said, "As you wish, Milady," and became silent. Meanwhile the cloaked person snorted. The gods and goddesses found it was a female voice. Their interest in the woman increased because she might be from the books. Zeus cleared his throat and demanded that she reveal herself or suffer the wrath of the gods. She chuckled but moved her hands to her hood and pulled down. The gods were speechless, and all of them were drooling or staring at the gorgeous woman standing before them in shock. She had red hair with pretty purple eyes and a toned body that would make even Aphrodite jealous. She wore a red silk dress that hugged her curves perfectly, some would even mistake her for Aphrodite if she wasn't already in the room. Kushina's skin was fair and flawless that would make most women jealous. Her deep crimson red hair fell down freely to her lower back. The mysterious woman laughed at the gods' faces. The gods and goddesses along with the demigods agreed wholeheartedly that her laugh was breathtakingly beautiful. Like small bells ringing or a soft lovely melody playing. Depended on the person, but this laugh sounded perfect. Well, her smile was perfect with her kissable pink lips and brilliant white teeth. She said, "I am Kushina Uzumaki, mother of Naruto Uzumaki and second wife of Hades." Aphrodite questioned, "Are you one of my daughter because you are was so beautiful, dear?" Kushina nodded her head slightly, then narrowed her exotic purple eyes and dangerous hissed out, "That doesn't mean I am defenseless or weak." After a pause she added, "If anyone disagree then I will kick all of your asses to Tartarus and back." Artemis nodded her head in approval and decided that she would have made an excellent hunter. The males in the room nodded their heads, while some were giving Hades a jealous look for getting a nice catch like Kushina, along with his other wife Persephone. Kushina looked around for someone she knows, but her eyes landed on Hades. Her eyes lit up, then grinned brightly and ran to him. She wrapped her arms around him tightly. She then gave her husband a kiss on the lips and smiled at him, saying, "I love you." Suddenly there was a second flash of light and it dimmed down to reveal the queen of the underworld herself. Demeter leaped out of her throne and hugged her precious immortal daughter, then asking her if she eats enough cereal. While Hades looked indifferent but had a look of love in his dark eyes. "Mother, will you stop worrying about me? I am a grown goddess now," exclaimed Persephone. Demeter wailed, saying how it is her no good husband's fault that her precious core turned on her. Persephone just rolled her eyes but turned to Kushina and asked how she was. Kushina looked shocked for a moment, but she got out of her stumble and shouted out, "You serious? Don't know me? I'm hurt." Persephone looked at her and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't know you." Kushina looked confused but then took a closer look around the throne room and came face to face with two Thalias. How? She thought, but made her way to Thales and maybe help explain what the hell is going on. Kushina whispered, "Why am I here and why doesn't anyone recognize me?" "Well, you have been transported here to read a series of your son Naruto. Oh, and by the way, we are in a different dimension than ours." Kushina sighed and gave a quick thank you and asked if she could sit by her. Thales nodded her head and made room for Kushina, while the demigods looked at her in awe and a little fear. Awe because this is the mother of the hero that we have been reading about, and fear because she was Hades' wife, or maybe that they don't know how powerful she is. "Well, now that introductions are done, why don't we settle for a nice warm dinner," said Hestia. The gods and demigods nodded their heads while their stomachs growled in agreement. The occupants made their way to the dining hall in Olympus that could view camp if some of the gods or goddesses wanted to. They usually look at camp often to check up on their children. The image is invisible so the half-bloods can't see them, but they can see their children. The reason behind the images are invisible is because they would break the ancient laws. The dining room had 4 pillars at the corners of the room and a pillar every few feet that could fit a god through. The place was made from marble like ancient Greece temples and buildings. The silverware, dishes, and goblets were pure gold. The plates and goblets were filled with everything imaginable. For the gods and goddesses, plates and goblets were filled with nectar and ambrosia. After everyone was full, they went back into the throne room. Ares was trying to get Aphrodite's attention. But the love goddess's attention was directed at her different dimension daughter, Kushina. Oh, she wanted to ask her how Hades became her husband, how she first met him, how many dates did she go on, when was her first kiss, if she was immortal, or if she did a three-way with Hades and Persephone. But most importantly, how her daughter's son Naruto loved life. Sorry if I sound like a pervert. Kushina was talking to both Annabeth and Athena, well, both were talking notes on anything important. But knowing them, anything and everything was important, like how a shinobi can mold the elements or how many different elements one can wield. As Kushina talked about her world, she talked about how the moon was created by the Rikiden Sennin, using the Jutsu Chibaku Tensei to entomb the 10-tailed beast or the Chibai. The other gods kept on staring at Kushina and wondered how Hades got to her before they did, because she sure was a beauty. Hermes had a glint in his eyes, then he finally went to her to see if her pranking skills were true. While Hades looked at his nephew in suspicion on what he was going to do with Kushina. He didn't know where the protectiveness came from, but softly growled. On the other hand, Persephone was looking at Kushina with interest while trying to ignore her mother, which was difficult. Because she kept on getting an odd feeling like a sisterly love sometimes, or other times Hermes' sister. Hera smiled at the scene of her family because her family were actually getting along and not fighting like always. Maybe this book can have some positive aspects like seeing through a demigod's eyes. Hera frowned, thinking how she sometimes envied some of the other gods and goddesses for have demigods. But struggled it off because she would never be unfaithful to her husband. No matter how angry she got or how unfaithful her husband would be. Who, by the way, can't keep it in his pants for not even a century. She sighed and wondered why Zeus even married her sometimes. Hera put some thought into it, but sighed again, but began with a fake smile. Well, let's get you to your rooms to have a relaxing sleep so we can read tomorrow morning, smiled Hera. The gods and demigods with Kushina protested but was quickly silenced by Hera's glare. Hera then looked at Kushina with envy on her face and gave a small smile for a second to her, but replaced it with an emotionless mask just as quick. Kushina smiled back at the Queen of Heaven but sighed in thinking about how she missed her son and real husband and his wife. From her dimension. Enough, thundered Zeus, getting annoyed. All of you will go to your rooms and get some sleep for tomorrow, hotly said Zeus. The occupants looked outside and that the moon was slowly making its way up the starry night. They guessed it is about 10 p.m. and Annabeth with her mother thought if we go to sleep, only we can get up earlier to read more. Apollo and Hermes escort all of them to their rooms, demanded Zeus. Oh, course, father, laughed Apollo and Hermes. Kushina went over to Hades to speak with him. Hello, smiled Kushina with love in her eyes. Hades smiled back and thinking, I guess this is not so bad after all. Hades finally questioned, what can I help you? Kushina smiled and asked, no, but I just wanted to say have a good night's sleep. With it she kissed him and walked away. Hades looked shocked and moved his hand where she kissed him, then gave a small smile to her retreating form. Persephone looked emotionless but vowed to have some words with her dear husband and lord. Olympus was truly a sight to see at night because the gold and silver glowed in the dim lights that reflected off the moon and stars. The torches glowed in the night like small fireflies glowing in the darkness of the night. The demigods were amazed at the sight to behold and gave small smiles to each other. Besides Thales and Kushina, who frowned and looked down, feeling out of place with the other demigods. But they made their way to their rooms in silence. The rooms were designed to be like their parents' domain and color scheme. The only one freaking out was poor Kushina. The room was all pink and too girly, it could possibly be considered a Barbie's dream house. One of the worst parts of the room that it was filled with pictures of lovey-dovey stuff. Like rainbows, people holding hands, and a few hearts in some of them. But moving on, the worst part was that the place had the smell of all the perfumes in the world, which was killing her nose. She looked at the room for a second. Blinked once, twice, and one more time before she fell on her knees and screamed out, my eyes, it burns. The other demigods could hear Kushina's terrified screams and winced and hoped to the gods that their room was not like Kushina's. Balzo and Phoebe went into their mistress's guest room. Inside, the room was filled with bow and arrows with an archery field. The bedroom was filled with scenery of a forest at night and you could see all the forgotten constellations from long ago. The room had 2 silver beds with silky sheets filled with moons and stars. You could smell a little of the forest in the room. All in all, the two hunters were at peace and happy to be in here, but missed their sisters deeply. Thalia and Thales went to Zeus's room because Thalia could speak to her different dimension self about everything in her world. Like if she had a brother named Jason or if Zoe died. Once the door was opened, it freaked Thalia out. The room floor was the glass floor, so you could see all the way down to the ground. Thalia looked over at Thales but found no fear and wondered how could she not be afraid of this. Thales properly knew what Thalia was thinking about, so she said, "Naruto helped me." Thalia just nodded her head fearful and climbed into one of the ground-level beds decorated with thunderstorms and lightning. Thales just looked at Thalia and shook her head, questioned, and thought to herself, is how afraid I was with heights before Naruto helped me. Thales focused her powers and flew up onto a floating bed, then closed her eyes, excited for the next day to come. She gave a small smile, hoping to see Naruto soon. Both were listening to Green Day until sleep consumed both of them. Annabeth went into her mother's guest room and her eyes widened, then smiled broadly. The reason is that the room was filled with books and more books. The cases of books were next to a computer properly with the internet if she know anything about her mother. She sighed and read a couple of books that interested her until she fell asleep with a book about architecture in her grasp. Percy, on the other hand, loved his room because it was exactly like the cabin in Montauk, where his mother and father met and where I shared some of my summers with my mom. Some of the beds had pictures of sea live and a trident on it. The fountain, however, was the best part because it reminded him of Poseidon's cabin. The bed was comfy and it felt like you were on the seabed because there was coral on the walls. But the roof had a special glass that was made only on Olympus that could let you view anything going on in the seas. But the best part is that it had blue chocolate chip cookies just like my mom's. With of course blue milk. Then he dreamily sighed, then said, I'm in heaven right now. Then around after he was finished with his midnight snack, he fell asleep with a smile on his face. Nico just grinned from ear to ear because his room looked badass. The room had Greek fire that illuminating the dark room. Nico put his picture of his sister Hazel and another picture of Bianca D'Angelo on the headboard of one of the beds. The beds had black silk filled with skulls and jewels. While some of the walls had murals of the underworld like Hades's palace one side, and on the other side was an image of the Isle of the Blessed. It looked awesome in his option and decided to go to sleep and dream of a reality of both of his sisters being alive. Morning came and when the gods and goddesses came into the throne room, they were shocked. The reason was that Kushina was soundly sleeping on one of the couches in the throne room. She looked perfect with her fiery red hair catching the sunlight coming through. She also had a soft comforting smile that would make her mother happy. While her mother tried to not to squeal on how cute Kushina looked right now. Hermes, Ares, along with Apollo especially, were drooling and their eyes looked love-struck. The gods along with the goddesses, except Artemis and Persephone, discussed on what to do with her. Finally it was decided that Hades wake her. Hades sighed but went over to her and shook her awake. Kushina moaned and whimpered 5 more minutes. Hades groaned but shook her awake again. Kushina suddenly punched him in the face with chakra enhanced that made him fly back, hitting a wall. While leaving an imprint of Hades on the wall of Olympus throne room. He looked at his brothers sporting a megawatt smile on Zeus, while Poseidon had a goofy smile. Hades had a bloody nose, and Demeter and his brothers vowed to remember this for at least a century. Just then Artemis along with her hunters and Persephone came into the throne room looking questionable at Hades. Apollo shouted out, "Little sis." Hades tried to wake her up, but Kushina punched him in the face. Artemis looked at Kushina with approval in her silver eyes and nodded to her with a smile on her face. She agreed again that she would make an excellent hunter. The gods looked pitiful at Hades while the goddesses looked pleased. Kushina looked half asleep and yawned, then she fell back to sleep. Aphrodite looked at Kushina with confusion because she was wondering why her daughter was sleeping here of all places. Finally Kushina woke up when the demigods came into the throne room. Kushina smiled, cheerful, happy as can be, while the gods looked at her with a little bit of fear. "Now let's start." "Read again," excitedly shouted Annabeth. "Okay, but who is going to be reading?" questioned Zeus. "I will," stated Kushina. Chapter 5 That bull is on steroids. "That's a funny title," commented Apollo, and Hermes agreed with his half-brother wholeheartedly. The demigods just shook their heads at the two immature gods' antics. The group tore through the night along dark country roads. "That is some serious driving," joked Apollo. Artemis rolled her eyes and muttered, "Idiot." Apollo smiled and said, "Oh, I love you too, little sis." Artemis glared at her twin and snarled out, "Apollo, how many times do we have to discuss this? I was born first, isn't that right, girls?" Zoe and Phoebe nodded their heads, agreeing with their mistress. Wind slammed against the Camaro. Rain lashed the windshield. "Dad isn't a happy camper today," snickered Hermes. Zeus glared at his son, disrespect to him, king of the gods, and slammed his precious master bolt on the throne room floor. The world down below experienced a huge thunderstorm that covered the entire sky with lightning flashing through the entire sky. While all this happened, the other gods and goddesses laughed at Zeus. The demigods on the other hand thought how temperamental Zeus was. The boys honestly didn't know how Percy's mom could see anything, but she kept her foot on the gas. "Well, that is my type of driving," smiled Ares, ready for a fight to start soon. "Oh no, you don't, in that car is my grandson and I will have to make it interesting love life like no other," snarled Aphrodite. Ares gulped and slumped in his seat with a pout on his face. The other gods and demigods alike laughed at the war god's expense. Naruto looked at Grover oddly, and when the lightning flashed, he saw those goat legs. He sighed, already knowing what he was, and knew that Grover was on their side hopefully. "No, he is with the monsters trying to kill you right now," joked Annabeth. "I knew it, he trying to overthrow us, and he kills everything he touches just like my daughter," scowled Zeus. Everyone just sighed and shook their head sadly because you can't argue with Zeus. For one, he is so stubborn that a brick wall would seethe with jealousy. "So, you and my mom know each other?" "Nope, he does not," said the gods and goddesses, with the demigods shaking their heads agreeing with their parents. Percy asked, not able to stay silent. Grover's eyes flitted to the rearview mirror. "Always keep a watchful eye on your surroundings," said Athena. Annabeth nodded her head while the other demigods just rolled their eyes in good nature. Though there were no cars behind them. "Not exactly," he said. "I mean, we've never met in person. But she knew I was watching you." Starker sang Apollo and Hermes. All the demigods just laughed at the two gods. "Watching me?" Starker said Apollo while Artemis was getting irritated quickly. "Keeping tabs on you. Making sure you were okay." Again Starker smiled Apollo and Hermes. "Would you shut up for once?" scowled Artemis and glaring at her twin and half-brother Hermes. The two hunters just nodded in agreement to what their mistress said. "But I wasn't faking being your friend," he added hastily. "I am your friend." What are you, exactly?" Percy asked. "The bad fighter," hissed out Ares. "That doesn't matter," said Percy and the other demigods. "Sure it does," laughed Ares. The gods looked at the war god in question. Ares just rolled his eyes and explained that he wouldn't want a pansy as a friend. The females in the room glared at the war god in fury, especially Aphrodite. "That doesn't matter right now." "It doesn't matter. From the waist down, my best friend is a donkey." "Oat seaweed brain," teased Annabeth. Grover let out a sharp throaty blah ha ha. Naruto could tell that Grover a bit ticked, but he gaffed, that was really funny to him. "Run for your lives," screamed Percy and Nico. "Oat." Grover cried. "What?" Once getting himself under control, Naruto helped the poor guy out. "So thoughtful," gushed Aphrodite. "Percy, he is a satyr, a being that is half human and half goat." "Are you sure he is not my child?" questioned Athena. "Nope, Naruto is mine and not yours," exclaimed Kushina. Annabeth whispered to Percy and said, "I guess you have competition now, seaweed brain." Percy blushed but remained silent, just smiled at Annabeth, making her blush cherry red. Athena looked shocked at how Kushina disrespected her and was about to say something but shook her head. Her focus went to her daughter and found her blushing at the sea spawn, so she glared daggers at him. Percy felt unfriendly aura coming from Annabeth's mom, Athena, and saw her glaring at him. So the natural thing to do was pale and find a place to hide, because the third worst person to piss off is your girlfriend's parents. But the second worst is your mother, because you should never piss off your mom. But the worst and most terrifying is your girlfriend, because she could grab your balls and threaten to remove them. But you would mean Mr. Brunner's myths. "They're not myths, child," said Hestia while smiled warmly at everyone. The gods, goddesses, and demigods just smiled back, thinking how good she makes everyone feels. "You paid attention to that?" Naruto smirked. "Let's throw a party." "I like this kid more and more," said Apollo while high-fived Hermes, who agreed with him. Percy just glared at him. Okay. Anyway, with the way Grover reacted, I am assuming that other satyr would trample you for that donkey remark." "You got it," smiled Fowls. "I thought it didn't matter." Percy shot back while Grover bleated again. "Obviously it does." Naruto replied with a smirk. "Wait, so all that Mr. Brunner taught us was actually preparing us for this stuff?" "No, it was going to prepare you for your trip to Candyland," Pedro said Dionysus. "Pretty much." Grover said. "Great," Naruto replied sarcastically. "Just what we need. Freaky monsters coming after us." "You got that right," muttered the demigods. While the gods and goddesses bowed their heads and looked sorry for making their children having a similar fate. Not only that, but those three old ladies were the fates and not myths, and neither was Mrs. Dods. Grover told them. "So you admit there was a Mrs. Dods?" Percy exclaimed. "Really, seaweed brain?" laughed out Annabeth. Aelia just shook her head while Nico smirked at Percy's discomfort. "Alls just looked like she has seen this every day." While Kushina just looked at Hades lovingly but smiled at the demigods in the room. "Of course." "Okay, so what was the point of hiding the fact that she was real?" Naruto asked. "The Miss Dear Child," smiled Hestia. The other gods and goddesses along with the demigods nodded their heads. The less you knew, the fewer monsters you'd attract, Grover said, like that should be perfectly obvious. It is so obvious, joked Hermes. We put mist over the human's eyes. We hoped you'd think the kindly one was a hallucination. But it was no good. You both started to realize who you are. Percy is going to be confused, said all the demigods. Percy blushed, then gave a smile and laughing a little bit. The gods and goddesses just shook their heads fondly but remained silent. Wait a minute, what do you mean? Percy asked. See, replied Annabeth. No one doubted you, wise girl, smiled Percy. Annabeth blushed and Athena just glared at the sea spawn with annoyance. Aphrodite squealed silently, surprising most of the gods and goddesses along with the demigods. Yeah, you lost me as well. Naruto deadpanned. No, Naruto, don't be like Perse, wailed Nico. Nico, Kelphead is not that bad, whispered Thalia. I know, but don't tell him that, Nico whispered back. Artemis was glaring at the son of Hades in suspension for talking to her hunter. Balzo and Phoebe glared at Nico because he was talking to one of their future sisters. Kashina smiled then giggled at Nico, thinking how he will react to his sister discovery. Angelo, never compare Naruto to Percy, threatened joke Thals. Why yes madam, shakily said Nico, not knowing if she was serious or not. All smiled and looked at Thalia, who grinned at her, then raised her thumb up. The weird bellowing noise rose up again somewhere behind us, closer than before. It's gaining on you, run for your lives, shrieked Apollo. Shut up brother, snapped Artemis. Apollo grinned and said, oh come on sis, lighten up. I will lighten up when you don't flirt with my hunters, snarled Artemis. Apollo stayed silent because he didn't want to experience his twin sister's wrath again or ever. Whatever was chasing us was still on our trail. Of course it is, said Thals. The gods and goddesses just grinned at the daughter of Zeus. Thalia just grinned and thinking how awesome she was. Percy, his mom said, there's too much to explain and not enough time. We have to get you two to safety. That is no fun, whined Ares. He got splashed with a gallon of Arctic cold water by Poseidon. Seaweed, will you stop that, screamed Ares. Ares, what have I told you about calling me that, threatened Poseidon. Ares gulped and said to never call you that again. Yes, and the consequences, smirked Poseidon. To wear a pink I love my little pony's shirt, gulped a pale war god. Yes, grinned Poseidon. Enough with this nonsense, boomed Zeus. Hera glared at her husband and smiled at Kashina to continue before more fighting broke out. Kashina just smiled and continued. Safety from what? You mean by whom, stated Athena and Annabeth. The other immortals and demigods in the room just rolled their eyes but smiled fondly at them. Before Poseidon interrupted by saying, always have to be technical, owlhead. Of course, kelp for brains, smiled Athena. Percy whispered to Annabeth saying, is this how we act too? Annabeth looked unsure but looked at the others in the room who nodded their heads. Who's after us? I wonder who Perse pissed off this time, questioned Nico. Thalia looked at the gods and goddesses who had a look of confusion. She said, well, Kelphead here has a way of pissing off anything that has a big ego. The gods and goddesses nodded their heads and went back to paying attention to the book. Kashina grinned but started again. Percy asked while Naruto raised an eyebrow. Oh, nobody much. Well, that's good, said Annabeth. Oh, Annabeth worried about Kelphead over here, commented Thalia. Well yes, shuddered Annabeth. Aphrodite squealed, thinking how cute their love lives will be. Grover said, obviously still miffed about the donkey comment. Just the Lord of the Dead and a few of his bloodthirstiest minions. So no one, smirked Zeus and Poseidon. I hate you, glared Hades. The rest of the people in the throne room laughed or giggled. Well, Nico tried to hide the fact he was laughing at him because he didn't want to get grounded. Grover. Sorry Mrs. Jackson. Could you drive faster, please? Yeah, because that is my son in the car, said Poseidon and Hades. Grover replied. What, you mean Hades? Naruto replied and the ground shook a bit and Grover nodded a little panicked. I am not that bad, am I, questioned Hades. The demigods with the gods and goddesses looked anywhere but the Lord of the Dead. They were also feeling somewhat guilty because Hades is always the first one to get blamed. While the boys were trying to wrap their heads around all this madness, Percy's mom made a hard left. I like her driving, laughed Ares. Everyone just tried to ignore the war god's comment. They swerved onto a narrower road, racing past darkened farmhouses and wooded hills. Zeus thought about his daughter's tree prison, then sighed. And pick your own strawberry signs on white picket fences. Where are we going? Percy asked. You are going to be running for your lives, said Apollo. Ares grinned and shouted action. Finally, this book was getting a little boring. Aphrodite glared at Ares but said sweetly, oh, you think love is boring, do you? Ares, being the dummier gods on Olympus, said without thinking things through, well yeah. Aphrodite huffed and thought maybe I should break up with him. Ares, shut up or I will kick your ass, smiled Kashina. Oh, you think a child of Aphrodite could possibly beat me, questioned Ares. "This one can," Kushina reported back. "Then prove it," sneered Ares. "Fine, I will," snarled Kushina. "Enough of this, later you can fight, but now we read," commanded Zeus. The room quieted down and Zeus nodded his head, then boomed, "Kushina, please continue." Kushina nodded her head but glared at the war god and continued. "The summer camp I told you about." His mother's voice was tight. "She was trying for Percy's sake not to be scared. The place your father wanted to send you. The place you didn't want me to go. Letting go of your child is the hardest thing in the world to do." Hestia smiled sadly. Hera and the others in the room nodded her heads slowly. "Please, dear," his mother begged. "This is hard enough. Try to understand. You're in danger." "When is he not?" said the demigods in the room. "Because some old ladies cut yarn." "Those weren't just any old ladies," Seaweed Brain yelled. "Annabeth." "I know that now, wise girl," frowned Percy. Annabeth sighed and said, "I know, Seaweed Brain." "Are you about done?" Hestia smiled warmly. They nodded and listened to the book again. Percy asked and Naruto sighed. "Man, if you paid attention in class, why that is bad." Naruto said. "When they cut the yarn, that means someone is going to die." "Sadly that is true," said Athena. The gods looked down, thinking about some of their children having similar fates. "Exactly." Grover said, "The fact they appeared in front of you too, they only do that when someone's about to die." "Whoa, you said you." Percy freaked. "Great, Seaweed Brain, you can be observant for once," joked Annabeth. "But I don't want to because I have you," smirked Percy. Annabeth blushed and looked away, while Aphrodite squealed so loudly that her squeals broke glass. After everyone recovered from the horrifying torture that was Aphrodite screaming about love, Zeus demanded everyone to be silent and to continue the book. Kushina readily agreed so she didn't have to listen to her mother's scream again. "No, I didn't. I said someone." Grover replied. "No, Goat Boy, you said you first and then someone after," said Thalia. "Still not very helpful." Naruto said. "It is, but you don't know it yet," Naruto smiled. Kushina. "Yeah, you meant me." Percy said. "Not true because Calphead here is standing here," smiled Thalia. Annabeth whispered to Percy, "I am glad it was not you." Percy smiled and said, "Me too, wise girl," and put his hand on her shoulders reassuringly. "I meant you, like someone. Not you, you." "Odd, I hope it is not me or you." Naruto replied. "Me too, and a couple of other girls as well," Winstalls and Kushina. "Boys." Percy's mom said. She pulled the wheel hard to the right and they got a glimpse of a figure. She'd swerved to avoid a dark fluttering shape now lost behind us in the storm. "Don't let your guard down anywhere, sweetie," said Kushina. Ares looked lustfully at her because she was the perfect woman for him. She was beautiful and was dangerous, a great combination. Aphrodite looked at the war god with a scowl on her ever-changing face. "The hell was that?" Naruto freaked. "Naruto Uzumaki, watch your language," said Hera. Demeter looked disappointed at the book and said, "You need to eat more cereal, young demigod, unlike my perfect core." Persephone blushed and stuttered out, "Please read, Kushina." Kushina nodded her head and started once more. "We're almost there," Mrs. Jackson said, ignoring Naruto's question. "Another mile. Please. Please. Please." Poseidon started to saying, "Please, please, please." While the other gods and goddesses just sighed and smiled fondly at their brother or uncle. They didn't know what there was, but it had to be safe from whatever the hell was chasing them. "Yeah, Camp Half-Blood," smiled the demigods, even Kushina, because Naruto tells her about Camp when he is in the underworld with his family. "It is not Mrs. Dods, that is for sure. Whatever it is, it's bigger and stronger than last time." "It is the Minotaur, I believe," said Athena. "Why is that, sis?" questioned Apollo. "Well, the title said the bull on steroids, so it has to be a bull," finished Athena. Apollo had a blank look on his face and said, "We will see if you are right by reading these books." Athena huffed at her half-brother's antics while Apollo grinned. The other gods and goddesses just shook their heads at their family interactions with one another. Before questioning silently, "Are we really this bad?" The immortals looked at the demigods and saw them nodding their heads, so the gods quickly looked away before their focus was back onto the book. "This is reminding me of the wave mission, only we are fleeing for our lives." "Oh no, my poor baby," cried Kushina. The gods thought it must be Kushina's time of the month and left it at that. While Hera smiled fondly at Kushina and thought she is a good mother before glaring at her Zeus. While Naruto was thinking that, Percy was thinking about the blades Mr. Brunner had thrown to them. "Of course, blame the centaur," laughed Nico and Thalia. Percy blushed then glared at his annoying cousins with a small smile on his face. Annabeth laughed at Percy's face because it was so cute, she thought anyways. Owls and Kushina smiled but remained silent, watching in amusement just like all the people in the throne room. Before he could ask Grover about that, the hair rose on the back of my neck. There was a blinding flash, a jaw-rattling boom, and the car exploded. It was an odd feeling being blown up. "Good job, said Nico. "Will you shut up, D'Angelo?" shouted out Percy. Like you were, weightless, crushed, burned, and being hosed down all at the same time. Ah, good memories, whispered Nico. What do you mean death, breathed, questioned Thalia. Well, wait and see, airhead, smirked Nico. Thalia glared at him, then crossed her arms and huffed. Percy pried his forehand off the driver's seat in front of him as his mom called out to him. Ugh, I am fine, he said. No, you're not, said the Nico and Thalia. Percy had a mocked hurt expression on his face and said, oh, how you wound me, dear cousins. That is our job, Kelpetaqua dude, laughed Thalia and Nico. He heard Naruto mutter out a super as they noticed the car was still intact because it was in a ditch. Looks like some of the crashes Ares gets daily or sometimes even hourly, laughed Hephaestus. All the gods and goddesses laughed, expect Ares, even all the demigods smirked or had amusement in their eyes. They sighed in relief that they were not dead, not yet anyway. Sweetie, don't talk like that because I want you to live a long and healthy life, smiled Kushina. Vera smiled at the red-haired mother and her respect for her went up a few notches because she was so dedicated to being a good mother. The gods nodded their heads while the goddesses had watery eyes except for Artemis. But she did have a smile on her face and she wished that she got Kushina as a hunter. While Naruto was trying to regain his bearings, Percy noticed that Grover looked unconscious. Grover. Stupid satyr letting my daughter die, thundered Zeus. Now husband, the satyr did his best, said Hera, her voice filled with hatred when she said husband. Zeus looked at Hera with a bit of fear and guilt on his face, but became silent. The throne room was left with an awkward tension in the room. Goody groaned. Same old, Grover laughed, all the demigods in the room. Naruto sweat dropped at that, yeah, he was going to be fine. Outru sighed, Falls with a smile on his face. Percy, his mother said, we have to, her voice faltered because when the lightning flashed, they saw a huge figure through the mud-splashed window. Oh goody, some action, hopeful someone will die, smiled Ares. Kushina dropped the book and disappeared for a moment but reappeared in the behind Ares. The gods and goddesses along with the demigods in the room were shocked at how fast Kushina was. Then she punched Ares so hard that he fell off his throne and landed on the floor and made a shockwave along with a crater. Ares fell unconscious, by the way he is still in his goatee size, meanwhile Kushina picked him up and snarled out, don't you ever say that again, or suffer my wrath. The goddesses were cheering in their heads that Kushina finally knocked down Ares off his high horse. While the gods were afraid of Kushina because of her monster strength. Hello? Naruto said, surprised. Son, don't get its attention, whimpered Kushina with tears running down her face because she felt so powerless to help her baby boy. The gods and goddesses looked sympathetic because they felt the same way every time their children has to battle for their lives. Hestia and Hera smiled and thinking that their family is coming closer and closer together. Boys, Percy's mother said, deadly serious. Get out of the car. She knows what the monster is, I'm impressed that Kelphead over here got her to fall in love with him, stated Athena. Poseidon glared at her but then sighed and went back to daydreaming of his time with Sally. She tried, the drivers said, but all the mud was blocking their way out. Passengers sighed. Oh, the Jackson luck, smiled Annabeth. Percy smiled and thought that Annabeth looked so beautiful when she smiled. He then paled and silently said, no bad thoughts, this is your best friend you are talking about. Head out now and run to the big tree. Well, how does a big tree help you fight monsters, questioned Apollo. Artemis sighed and scowled, it is properly the camp boundary. But if it is the camp boundaries then Sally can't come, frantically said Poseidon. The sea god looked close to passing out due to much drama. While Ares just grinned and waited for the show to begin with a bag of popcorn in his hands. She yelled, pointing to a large tree in the distance as they got out. She knows, sadly answered Athena. The goddesses had tears in their eyes thinking if this is it for Sally. What? Percy replied, confused until the lightning flashed and a large pine tree in the distance appeared and that thing was huge. My daughter, smiled Zeus. Thalia glared at Percy and shouted out, are you calling me Fat Jackson? No, exclaimed Percy with a blush on his face. Thalia, Falls, Kushina, and the other demigods laughed at Percy's predicament. That's the property line. Knew it, excitedly said Apollo, and Artemis just shook her head, then sighed. His mom said. Get over that hill and you'll see a big farmhouse down in the valley. Run and don't look back. Yell for help. Don't stop until you reach the door. She is sacrificing herself for her son for more time getting away. Cried Hestia. Percy looked down, then sadly thought about that fateful day going over and over again in his mind. Annabeth just put her hand next to his and squeezed it. Percy looked up and smiled at her and sighed, letting the memory fade into the back of his brain. Mom, you're coming too. She can't, young one, sadly smiled Hestia. Her face was pale, her eyes as sad as when she looked at the ocean. Oh, she still has feeling for Poseidon, squealed Aphrodite. Poseidon blushed and wished that Sally was his second wife like Kushina was to Hades, but sighed. No. Percy shouted. You are coming with us. Help me carry Grover. Percy, you are loyal, maybe too loyal, muttered Athena. Hestia just smiled at Percy and waved for Kushina to begin reading again. Good. Grover moaned, a little louder. Shut up, you stupid satyr, bellowed out Zeus. Naruto growled and yelled above the rain. Give him to me. We will get there faster that way. Oh, my grandson is so selfless and cute, screeched out Aphrodite. The gods and goddesses along with the demigods recoiled from the sudden glass-breaking force. Percy nodded and gave Grover to Naruto and turned back to Mom to see the creature coming towards them. The gods and goddesses became more interested in the center of the throne room's floor. The image started to appear just like an iris message. It showed a crashed 98 Camaro and 4 people in a heavy storm. 3 out of the 4 people in the image were teenagers. One was Percy with his sea green eyes and airbrushed black hair. The other person the gods knew was Grover. Grover was unconscious and groaning out for food. The next person was a young woman who had brown hair carrying a purse. The last person the gods looked at was a blonde-haired with blue-eyed teenager. The boy had an excellent build with 6 whiskers on his face. All in all, Aphrodite looked pleased with her favorite grandson's physical body. It was huge. That, and it seemed that it had fur on it. The figure was cloaked in shadows that it was impossible to see except 2 horns that came up from its hairy head. But you could see the ring on its nostrils and had a lot of muscles. Athena gasped and knew what the monster was now. Naruto turned to look at it and yelled, "Holy cow." "You mean bull," said Thales, the other demigods, and Percy. "There is nothing holy about that creature and it is not a cow." "You got that right," shouted out Poseidon. "Unlike my cows," grinned Apollo. The others in the throne room just sighed and waved the sun god off. Mrs. Jackson was able to shout out. "You got that right," muttered Percy. Naruto looked at her with a deadpan expression that said, "Duh." And looked at it again and he saw horns jutting out its head. "Yeah, not a cow but a bull." "Wait, what is the monster chasing after them?" questioned Apollo. Artemis sighed and then said, "You idiot, it is the minotaur." "Minotaur?" panicked Poseidon. "Yes," grumbled Zeus. "Read Kushina so we can find out what happens to Percy and your son." Kushina quickly nodded her head and quickly read the next line. "Still, it was not good." "At least he knows," muttered and sighed Aphrodite. Kushina smiled at her mother and memories came to her when Naruto was first born. How happy she and Hades had been. Hades, Persephone, Aphrodite, Nyx, Hera and herself are and always will be proud of him. "He doesn't want us," Mrs. Jackson called out. "He just wants you too. Besides, I can't cross the property line." "She's a good mother," smiled Hera. "More than you will ever be," whispered Hephaestus. Luckily for him, Hera didn't hear him. But Percy and Naruto started to say. "We don't have time. Go. Please." "Sally, why do you have to be so selfless?" grunted Poseidon. "That is a trait Sally passed on to Percy. Weed brain kelp head here," said Nico Anabathalia. This just made Percy mad and he went over to his mother and helped out all the way. "Oh, he is so kind," squealed Aphrodite. Her squeal made the occupants over their ears and less threatened of being deaf. "We're going together. Come on, Mom." "He is stubborn, the boy gets it from his father," laughed Zeus and Hades. Poseidon just glared at his brothers but silently cursed his stubbornness. Naruto just smirked at Percy's stubbornness, just like him in some aspects. "I told you." "Stubborn," sang Annabeth and Thales. "Mom. I am not leaving you. Come on." "Oh, he's so loyal," said Aphrodite. "Maybe too loyal," muttered Athena. They got a portion of the way, but the monster was gaining on them and quick. "Run for your lives, it's a bull," screamed Apollo and Hermes. Artemis just got up from her throne and threw a shoe at them. But after the shoe had no effect, then she resorted to arrows. Naruto looked at it again and his eyes widened. "Holy crap, that thing looks like it is on steroids." "Oh, I see the title of the chapter is Bull on Steroids," exclaimed Apollo. Artemis just put her hands on her face and whispered, "He must have been adopted because there is no way we are twins." "Hey little sis," said Apollo. Artemis reared her head and shouted, "I am not your little sister, I helped birth you." "Well, you are still my younger sis and I feel a limerick coming along," smiled Apollo. "Oh," whimpered out Lord Apollo, "thou ask of thee not to," but was all she got across before Apollo started singing a limerick for Artemis. "There once was a goddess from Sparta who hated a man's pinata. While her eyes were stone cold. She had a dress of gold. Dancing with cow in Sparta. Tried to do a limerick but failed at it." "Oh, I have a poem coming too, little sis, in your honor," grinned Apollo. Artemis shook her head begging for Apollo to stop, but he didn't listen. But luckily Zoe shouted to Apollo the ask not to begin. That got Apollo's attention and looked at Artemis's face, which was bright red. He grinned that his plan to embarrass his little sis worked. After that limerick, Artemis's face was red and she wanted to find a hole and hide for a couple days. The gods and goddesses laughed at Artemis's poor blushing face. Artemis's blush increased, Zoe and Phoebe looked concerned with their mistress. Which Artemis waved them off and assured them she was okay, then she said, Kushina, please read or I may do something to my idiot of a brother. Artemis glared at Apollo but was ruined by her blushing face. Kushina began. He said, commenting on all the bulging and rippling muscles on that thing. Percy blinked owlishly, recognizing this creature from Mr. Brunner's class. At a first Calp had teased Dahlia. Percy just huffed but smiled at her. That's Pasiphae's son, his mother said. I wish I'd known how badly they want to kill you. A lot more wants to kill him now, said Annabeth. Poseidon turned into a puddle of water and the gods along with the goddesses looked amused at Poseidon's transformation. But he's the Min. Don't say his name, she warned. Names have power. Smart, remarked Athena and Annabeth. Annabeth blushed while her mother smiled at her in return. Terrific, this really is like the wave mission. Naruto replied, getting odd looks as they ran. The same confused looks was plastered on all the gods and goddesses' faces with all the demigods besides Kushina and Thales. I'll tell you later. Naruto replied as they ran. He too knew what this creature was and growled. It was a big brute called the Minotaur. Well, that is different, said Hermes. The gods and goddesses just nodded their heads in agreement. It might strong, but it was dumb if the books were right. Yup, pretty dumb, laughed Thales. Its senses are poor except for smelling, said Annabeth and Annabeth. The only thing that it could rely on was its sense of smell out in this weather and it was only a matter of time before it found them. Don't jinx it, whispered Kushina and the others in the room besides Ares because he wanted action. As if on cue, the bullman bellowed in rage. Temper, warned Apollo with humor in his voice. He picked up Gabe's Camaro by the torn roof, the chassis creaking and groaning. He raised a car over his head and threw it down the road. He has anger issues, isn't that right, little sis, smirked Apollo. Artemis glared at her twin but sighed and thought he will never learn. But coldly began Apollo, don't call me little sis. The other gods and goddesses just sighed and watched in amusement at the interaction of the twin archer. It slammed into the wet asphalt and skidded in a shower of sparks for about half a mile before coming to a stop. The gas tank exploded. Ah, so pretty, and there is action finally, sighed Ares. Aphrodite threw a shoe at him and screamed, shut up, Ares, you are not going to endanger my perfect grandson. Oops. Percy said. Yeah, so much for not a scratch. The throne room was filled with laughter. Naruto laughed a little, freaked out. That thing has Granny Tsunade's strength. No, Tsunade has a bit more strength than the Minotaur, sweetie, said Kushina. The other just have Kushina look of surprise and are you kidding me stare. The males in the room just recoiled at the thought of a female having more powerful than a Minotaur and wondered if she leveled anything when it was her time of the month again. While the females just smiled and Artemis wanted to meet her. Boy, Percy's mom said. When he sees us, he'll charge. Wait until the last second, then jump out of the way directly sideways. Wow, Uncle P, you know how to choose them, said Hermes and Apollo. Poseidon just blushed and waved his hand to Kushina to begin reading again. He can't change directions very well once he's charging. Do you understand? Hopeful, said everyone in the throne room. Oh, that is useful. Naruto said. How do you know all this? She studied unlike a certain someone, said Athena and Annabeth. Athena looked at Poseidon knowingly and Annabeth looked at Percy jokingly. Percy asked. I've been worried about an attack for a long time. I should have expected this. I was selfish, keeping you near me. But a mother's saddest thing to do is letting their children go crooked out. Hera and Hestia. All the other goddesses and Kushina nodded their heads in agreement because they know from experience. Mrs. Jackson said sadly. What's done is done. Besides, you're a mom, it is natural. Kushina and Hera smiled at the young blonde in the iris message. Hera thought he might be different than any other demigod. Kushina looked at Naruto with tears in her eyes and smiled, thinking how grown up he sounded. Naruto replied while Percy nodded to that statement. But there was another bellow of rage and the bullman started tromping uphill. Oh, I love this action, howled Ares. Everyone in the throne room looked at the war god in disgust but said nothing. Great. Naruto panicked. The bullman on steroids had smelled them and was charging in fast. Apollo and Hermes laughed at the nickname for the Minotaur. Everyone else was smirking or smiling because they thought it was funny. To Naruto, everything was happening in slow motion. He readied himself for what he had to do. Those are good instances, remarked the gods and goddesses. The demigods just nodded their heads wishing that they had instances like Naruto. Zoe and Phoebe frowned but couldn't deny that for a boy he was good. Zoe scowled and didn't see Kushina or Thal's smirking face, wondering how Zoe will react to her dating him. More importantly, Artemis's reaction. I guess we will have to protect him against an enraged moon goddess. Gathering some chakra to his legs and tightening his hold on Goat Boy, he patiently waited for the right moment. Good look for an opening and strike, commented Athena. 20 feet. 10 feet. 5 feet. He saw Mrs. Jackson roll out of the way, but it seemed Percy was waiting too long. So he used his free hand and pushed him out of harm's way and jumped him into the air, heading for the tree. Nice moves, Run, sneered Ares. The monster seemed miffed by this as it blinked in confusion until he vaguely saw Naruto land near the tree. Super ninja skills, said Apollo. Everyone just rolled their eyes on the sun god's antics. Snorting, he faced Percy. It was sent for a purpose after all. To abduct Percy's mother and then test the master's son. Hades shouted in enraged Poseidon. The anger sea god made the earth itself shake to its foundations. The seas were chaotic and dangerous to anyone at sea because there were hurricanes with some tsunami. But even land didn't save them from Poseidon rage because earthquakes were popping up everywhere. One of the earthquakes was a 9.5, while some mortals thought that the apocalypse was here. Huge storms were gathering everywhere on the world. Poseidon is the Stormbringer. Percy quickly told Poseidon that Sally was alright and alive. After a few minutes Poseidon calmed down but glared at Hades for his actions. Hades looked shocked for a moment and thought, why would I go through all this trouble just to abduct this woman? Ashina glared at her husband and Hades flinched slightly. But she continued. Naruto growled. He would not let his friend die. So he laid Grover down near the tree and jumped back to Percy. Oh, my grandson is so brave and handsome, squealed Aphrodite. The other in the room just sighed at the love goddess antics. He landed Percy as he mom got to him. They looked at him oddly again and he said, it is a ninja thing. Just like your old mom, said Thales. Ashina gave her a mock glare but laughed a little later. Come on. Then they ran for their lives to the tree. Though camp is a little further away, smiled Annabeth. Naruto wondered why Mrs. Jackson said that she was not able to get to where they were going. Pamp Half-Blood, said the demigods in the room. Reaching the hill with the tree, the boys took notice that a valley was below them and it had a farmhouse that had yellow lights glowing in the window. The big house, said Thales. The demigod smiled at her and Annabeth wished some of their siblings came over to read. Scowling, Naruto growled. With the way things were going, they would never make it. Don't think like that, sweetie, nervously said Kushina. Run, Percy. Naruto heard Mrs. Jackson call out. I can't go any farther. Run. Oh no, said Kushina. The gods and goddesses just bowed their heads, then thought fate is so cruel. They froze in shock and fear as the minotaur came rushing up to them and she tried to get out of the way like last time, but it had learned its lesson last time. No, whimpered Poseidon and he shut his eyes hoping if he couldn't see it then it wouldn't happen. It brought out an arm and caught her by the neck while she struggled to get away. Everyone was staring transfixed on the image before them. The mortal Sally Jackson was in the clutches of the minotaur. Her straight brown hair was plastered to her head due to the rain coming down from the heavens. Her sparkling blue eyes had a look of fear in them. Ones that Poseidon wished he never saw them because he instantly recoiled from it as if it burned him. She struggled in the minotaur's grip but it was useless because it was too strong for her to get out of. Poseidon and the goddesses had tears in their eyes while the others looked elsewhere other than the scene before them. Mom, Mrs. Jackson. The boy screamed. She caught Percy's eyes, managed to choke out one last word. Go. Selfless to the very end, sniffed Kushina and Hera. Then, with an angry roar, the monster closed his fists around his mother's neck and she dissolved before their eyes. The throne room was silent for the loss of Sally Jackson for her sacrifice. Percy looked at the scene with sadness in his sea-green eyes. Melting into light, a shimmering golden form, as if she were a holographic projection. The form of teleportation croaked some of the gods. The blinding flash and she was simply gone. Hades trailed a broken-faced sea god. Percy looked defeated, having to see the worst moments of his short life again. Hades had the decency to look ashamed of what his future and alternative self did. No. Percy yelled. What the hell is going on? Naruto yelled, irritated about what was going on. You got that from both Hades and me, said Kushina, twirled her bright red hair around her fingers while holding the book open with her other hand. Anger overcame Percy and the boys nodded. They would have to try and take this thing down like Mrs. Dods. You mean Electo, half-joked Nico while thinking about the loss of Sally. He loved Sally like a mother because she always takes care of him when he really needs it. Like she makes him cookies when he is hungry. Or gives him company when he feels lonely, or even a place for him to crash when he is tired. All in all, Sally treats Nico like a son and in turn Nico treats Sally like a mom. They caught sight of Grover and charged after him, intent to stuff him out. The Minotaur shouted out an excited Zeus. Bad daddy, shouted out Thales. Now my daughters, he is getting what he deserves, commented Zeus. Hera just glared at him, which made Zeus stop. Then Hera grinned and her gaze went back to the book. Ah. Let's make this thing holy. Naruto yelled while Percy took off his red jacket. Oh, my grandson, a stripper, gasped Aphrodite with a blush on her face. Kushina would not hear any of this because she turned red and shuddered out, mother, he is not a stripper. The others in the throne room just shook their heads in amusement. Hey, steroid freak. Over here. He gets that from me, blushed Kushina. That got the beast's attention back on them. Percy flung his red jacket around like Minato would do as it charged after them. Wow, shouted all the demigods in the room, memorized by the display of grace and speed shown by Naruto. Even the two hunters had to agree his speed was impressive event to a hunter like themselves. However, he could not jump out of the way like before. He imitated Naruto and jumped upward and went farther than usual somehow. Wonder how he did that, as he couldn't chakra like Naruto. Those are demigod powers. Young goading Hestia smiled warmly at the demigods. He turned his attention back to the bull because it had impacted the tree, one of its horns stuck on it. Is that what happened to you, questioned Nico. His gaze went to the son of Poseidon. He nodded his head, but his gaze went to the scene below him, to the fight. Ares just grinned happily because nothing, and I mean nothing, made him excited than to watch a good fight. Naruto smirked as he created a swirling ball of energy in his hands and shouted, there was a reason I never showed you this before. Rasengan. Kushina's eyes went to Hades and shouted out, that's your technique. Hades looked shocked and the other gods and goddesses looked interested at the new development. He slammed the ball into the side of the creature. As if that would wound the minotaur, laughed Ares. You would be surprised, smirked Kushina. Ares glared at her but thought she is going to get it soon. Ares snarled out, if you think you knew it all, then I challenge you to a fight. Kushina smiled and bowed her head, then said, I accept your challenge. Aphrodite and Hades were silently worried for the safety of Kushina. Aphrodite because she was her precious daughter. Hades on the other hand was worried about his wife from the book. Ares laughed and said, as if you could beat me. Kushina snarled at him and said, fine, after this chapter then. You're lose, girly, said Ares. Enough, continue reading, Kushina thundered Zeus. She nodded her head and started. It flew a few feet away at an odd angle because when it did, its horn broke off. Thou thinks thee has a powerful weapon, said Zoe, looking at the image of Naruto on the throne room's floor. Percy quickly ripped it out, hoping to use it as a makeshift weapon. Naruto was about to tell him not to bother with until he saw the minotaur getting back up. Young goading, you have to use celestial bronze, Hestia smiled at the image before her. Looking in horror, they saw the huge hole in the gut of the beast, but it seemed to be healing up quickly. Wow, shouted out the demigods in the room. Thinking how cool it would be to have charcoal like Naruto and Kushina. Before they do anything, however, it charged at them again. No, exclaimed Kushina, tears rolling down her face, worried about her son getting to safety. The immortals and demigods in the room just stared transfixed at the image below them. They couldn't speak, just watched the scene in wonder and a little bit of fear. It swung at Percy and sent him a few feet away, knocking the air out of him. That's gotta hurt, said the demigods. It did the same to Naruto, but he rolled with a blow so it would not do as much damage. Smart, remarked Athena with a glint in her cloudy grey eyes. Jumping back at it, he activated the seal on his pants, took out a kunai, channeled chakra to it and sliced the remaining horn off, making it cry out in rage. The boy is not a common male, is he, Melody questions O. Artemis just nodded her head, agreeing with one of her oldest friends. Seeing that Percy was getting back up, he thought quickly. Normal attacks don't do a lot of damage, but it does have a nasty scar from my Rasengan. Fight, screamed Ares. The other people in the throne room just shot Ares a dirty look. Zoe scowled and snarled, a perfect example of a disgusting male. Ares' face turned red with anger and was about to kill the hunter, but a silver arrow missed by a hair length. He looked around the throne room for the culprit and found Artemis glaring at him with fury and hate in her silver eyes. Ares backed down instantly because you do not want to go against a pissed off Artemis. Maybe it doesn't heal all the way, what if using its horns will work? He then stabbed a horn into the old wound and it twisted harshly. It cried out in agony when he did that, and it seemed that it was not healing at all. The power of the mythical world, dear, smiled Hera. The gods and demigods in the room looked at Hera as if she sported two heads. Or that she was fine with Zeus's affairs. He quickly jumped over it and on its back, stabbing it in the neck. Percy. Stab for the heart. The heart. Good think, punk, aim for a viral organ, nodded Ares. Athena just nodded her head, glaring at Ares with distaste for agreeing with him. He yelled out, struggling to stay on. Percy seemed to get the idea and quickly ran up to it, avoiding the massive flailing arm that were trying to get Naruto off of it. The room held their breath, waiting what would happen next. He stabbed it hard and it cried out before it burst into the same crap Mrs. Dods did. Yeah, they did it, screamed the demigods while the gods and goddesses smiled. The two hunters just glared at the two boys in the image on the floor because boys were pigs and hurtful to women. Even Artemis was smiling at the scene before her, but Zoe vowed that she would not fall for the boys' tricks. Kushina continued in a happy voice, thinking Naruto is safe and sound. The scene of the image disappeared into the regular throne room floor. Collapsing to his knees, he felt the rush of adrenaline wore off and the feeling of losing his mother was starting to crash down on him. Poor dear, sadly said Hestia and Hera. Naruto picked up Percy. They opposed each other until they got to Grover. Come on, we gotta get to that house, we won't be out of the woods until we do. Always be cautious, said Annabeth and Athena simultaneously. Naruto said as he threw Grover over his shoulder while the two demigods supported each other as the rain has suddenly stopped. Of course, make your nephews fight harder for them, scowled Poseidon and Hades. Zeus just glared at his elder brothers. When they got to the pouch, Naruto fell to his knees and it seemed that Percy was barely conscious. Hey Percy, you need to get into shape, joked Nico. Percy looked at his younger cousin and stuck out his tongue at him. Thalia just shook her head and muttered, boys. The two hunters just beamed at Thalia, but Zoe was the only one who caught her silver circlet on her head. Her dark volcanic eyes widened and sighed to herself. Kushina started again once the room quieted down. The weight of the two and the battle was just now getting to him. Ugh, I am weak. I have not fought in a long time. That's alright, sweetheart, you can train when you are at camp, replied Kushina. Persephone just smiled, thinking Kushina isn't that bad to deal with, but dismissed the thought. Kushina started again and couldn't wait for her fight with Ares after this chapter. Looking up, he saw the familiar face of Mr. Brunner, who was giving them a serious look. He also a very pretty blonde-haired girl, whose hair looked curled like a princess's. One of them has to be it, they just have to. The girl said. Annie, sung Thalia. Annabeth blushed and mocked glared at Thalia, saying, don't call me that. Thalia and Thal smiled but waved it off. Silence, Annabeth, Mr. Brunner said. They're still conscious. Bring them inside. Yes, they would be very helpful if you don't mind. Smartest, thought everyone in the room. Naruto replied weakly, catching them off guard. Going inside, Naruto helped the girl named Annabeth put Percy and Grover on different cots in the room. So thoughtful, gushed Aphrodite. My name is Annabeth Chase, by the way. Oh my gosh, you are so cute, Annabeth dear, smiled Aphrodite. The girl said with a small smile. Naruto cracked his back and said with a weak smile, Naruto Uzumaki, and if you don't mind, I am about to lose consciousness. Well, that's unexpected, smiled Apollo. Hermes nodded his head in agreement while high-fiving his half-brother. Annabeth had wide eyes as she watched him put his back to the cot and say, good night. Before falling down, out like a light. So my children will make an appearance, hopeful, said all the gods and goddesses besides Artemis, Hera, and Hestia. Still never ceases to amaze me. Yeah, Naruto, Percy, and Grover is an amazing guys, smiled Falls. Mr. Brunner suddenly said, making the girl jump. Which one? All three. They protected each other in that school I went to. Naruto seems to be a natural fighter though. Of course, smiled Kushina. He replied. But considering where he from, I am not surprised. Where? Oh, I am sure he will tell you and the rest of the camp later. So even Chiron knows as well, said all the gods and goddesses. Come and get me when one of them wakes. Mr. Brenner said as he left. Now Annabeth was even more curious. You're always curious, Annie, smirked Thalia. Annabeth blushed and looked away from everyone so no one can see her blush. XXXX. Naruto woke up with a start as he bolted up in the bed he was in. I wonder if Naruto's children will have advanced healing, questioned Athena. Kushina nodded her head and said, it is a family bloodline, so yes, they will have it. Everyone looked shocked and Athena and Annabeth wanted to know more about the Uzumaki bloodline. That scared the crap out of Annabeth, who had just walked in. Ah. Don't do that. Sorry. Naruto said while scratching the back of his head. He looked at the horn he was still holding and then to Percy, who was still out of it. He brought a hand up to his chin and said, so all of that crap did happen. Language, honey, sighed Kushina. The goddesses just smiled at Kushina and agreed with her wholeheartedly. Yep, sighed Annabeth. I still can't believe you two were able to kill that monster. Why so surprised, Annie, questioned Thalia. Annabeth sighed and shouted out, don't call me that. Thalia just grinned at her and said no way. Annabeth just groaned and pouted. Kushina smiled at the interaction but continued on. Naruto smirked and said, believe it. Anyway, knowing that names have power around here, I will just call it the bull freak on steroids. Ahahaha, I can't get over that name, laughed Apollo and Hermes. Annabeth stared at Naruto for a long time, making him a bit uncomfortable, until she let out a laugh, which was followed by another laugh from Mr. Brunner. Naruto does have humor, screamed out both Apollo and Hermes. Apollo said, I will take on Naruto as my apprentice. All shook her head rapidly, then said, oh no you won't, because another one of Naruto's girlfriend will kill you slowly and painful. Aphrodite shouted out excitedly, my grandson has more than one girlfriend. Balls just nodded her head and smiled. Zoe just huffed then said, hateful, thou should have known that they are a perfect example of a male. Everyone besides Artemis and Phoebe looked surprised at this revelation. Good to see you again, old man. Naruto commented. Before Annabeth could correct him, Mr. Brunner chuckled and said, Naruto, here I am called Chiron. Properly going to have a smartest comment about a horse, smirked Hermes. The look on Naruto was priceless. He was still smiling, but he had the oh shit smile. "Oh, so where is your horse half?" "I knew it," screamed out Hermes. Everyone shouted back, "No one doubted you." Hermes then rubbed the back of his head and laughed at himself. "This is a magical wheelchair to when I want to go out, I use this to hide my true self." The now dubbed Chiron replied. "Oh, that makes sense. So, how long was I out?" "You just got here last night. That is why I said you shouldn't even be up," Annabeth said. "Wow, that is awesome, impressive," shouted out the demigods with the gods and goddesses. "Oh well, I have always been a really fast healer. I thought it was because of the fox." "Nope, your bloodline, sweetheart," smiled Kushina. But he trailed off as he saw Annabeth gave him a look of confusion, while Chiron had a serious look on his face. "I take it you have no clue what I am talking about." "Pretty much," muttered Annabeth. Percy and Nico gasped, then said, "There is something wise girl Annabeth doesn't know." Annabeth blushed, then screamed, "Shut up." "No." The blonde girl said. "Yeah, we were right for once against Annabeth," said Percy and Nico. "I have an idea. Fox is known as the Kyuubi, correct?" Chiron asked. "Why yeah, how do you know about that in this world?" "Because Chiron is awesome," smiled Annabeth. Naruto asked with narrowed eyes while Annabeth looked even more confused. "I would never see the day that wise girl over here would looks confused," said Percy with a grin directed at her. "Shut up, seaweed brain," blushed Annabeth. "I hear things when I got to the annual meets of the gods. Some speak about going to a world that the Lord of the Dead banished the beast known as the Kraken to." "Wait, isn't the Kraken the most feared and powerful sea monster throughout history?" questioned Percy. Poseidon nodded his head and said it can match Taihan in strength, but luckily for us they have never teamed up. "So where is the Kraken then?" questioned the demigods. "It is at the bottom of the sea just east of the Sea of Monsters with celestial bronze chains, holding each of its tentacles and arms down," said Poseidon. "Do you think anything can break it free?" asked Percy. Poseidon shook his head, and Percy asked why, "Because there are about half my army guarding or patrolling around that blasted creature. Besides, no one knows where the most feared sea monster is, and if all sea life avoid that cavern." "But father," replied Percy. But Poseidon just sighed and said, "Not even Aeneas, the titan of the oceans, can control the Kraken's son." Percy looked surprised, but Poseidon waved him off and said, "Let Kushina read again, then maybe later we will talk again." Percy nodded his head and focused on the book again. Kushina started again. "Though it may be long gone thanks to a man called the Six Paths Sage, it's remained. They were known as the tailed beasts, and the Kyuubi was the strongest of them all." Chiron explained. "They even spoke of people who were forced at birth to hold these beasts in their bodies via a seal, and you were one of them. They're called power of a human sacrificer." Jinchkrikis sighed Kushina. "Yeah. So what of it?" Naruto asked. "Only a demigod can handle the power of the Kyuubi within their body, but not any old demigod, no, a child of the big three or one's descendants." "And nice to know, so that means Kushina is a descendant of one of the big three," then answered Athena. Kushina blushed and said, "It's Poseidon." Poseidon smiled at one of his descendants, while Percy smiled at having a too many great niece, Kushina and her son Naruto. "Though I have a feeling that it is Poseidon's handiwork," Hades said in chapter 19 in Prince of the Underworld. "You are in the same boat as Percy." "No, he is not," stated Fowls. "If you are indeed a child of the big three, then one of you has to decide the fate of the world at a later time as said in a prophecy of the oracle." "He's not interested," yelled out Fowls and Kushina. Naruto held up a hand for him to stop. "I am not interested, nor do I want to decide the fate of the world. If what you say is true, then I will leave it to Percy. He is a good kid, I am sure he will do the right thing." "He is and did," whispered Annabeth. "As for me deciding that, well, as an old friend says, it is way too troublesome." A Nara clan member laughed. Kushina. "I see, just know that the prophecy says the time will come when the demigod is 16, so we have time." Chiron replied. "Stop trying to manipulate my son, you old horse," snarled out Kushina. Naruto's eyes widened and he inwardly groaned before saying, "Well, nothing is set in stone." "That's right," smiled Fowls, thinking about what happened with the prophecy with Zoe. He then tried to get up but felt kind of weak. "Great, one major fight and I am out. I need to get back in shape." "That is what camp is for," said the demigods. He then thought back to what Chiron said. "Hey, if I am a kid of the big three, whose am I?" Hades. Kushina looked at her husband and blushed, then quickly looked away. Hades smirked and thought having Kushina being his second wife wouldn't be a bad thing. Persephone smiled and made a mental note to have a talk with Kushina later. "We have an idea, but we must keep quiet until they claim you. Besides, being one of the big three's kids is kind of bad," Chiron stated. "Why?" "Because they swore an oath after World War II that they would not have kids anymore." "Which Poseidon and Daddy broke it," said Fowls. The gods and goddesses along with the demigods looked confused because didn't Hades break it when he sired Naruto? Annabeth answered for him. Naruto snorted. Well, we can see how that worked out. Yes, we can, hissed out Hera, looking at Zeus murderously, which Zeus flinched and backed away from. Yes, Chiron smirked. Annabeth, would you please get some ambrosia and nectar? I wonder what it tastes like for him, questioned the everyone in the room besides Kushina and Thals. It should help him recover faster. As she left, he noticed Naruto looking at him oddly. It is the food of the gods. Normal human can't eat it or they will die. Painful, but oh, if only the demigods would do that so that I could leave that ghastly camp, grinned Dionysus. The other gods and goddesses glared at the god of wine in disgust. Dionysus waved his hand and ignored the glares from everyone, then said, you can read tomato. Kushina's face went crimson red with rage and made a mental note to prank him later, because no one calls her tomato and lives. So she continued anyways, but in the back of her mind plotting her revenge against anyone who calls her tomato. Demigods eat it because it helps them recover and it is good for them. Very good for you, drooled Apollo and Hermes. Artemis shook her head and muttered, man. Ah. Naruto's smart reply was. Oh, and I almost forgot. These are yours now, use them wisely. Wait, what are they, questioned an excited Nico. We don't know yet, death breathed, sighed Thalia. Chiron said as he took out those familiar lucky charms of his. Oh, they would look so badass if I had them, chuckled Ares. Everyone just sighed and tried to ignore the war god but failed. Taking them, Naruto asked, so these actually turn into those blades I was using at the museum? Yes, and they each hold half of the Kraken's power, so please be careful. Oh Mother Ray, that is a powerful weapon, shuddered all the gods and goddesses in the room. Huh? Your father had the smith god forge them from its raw power. Hades, you gave your son a very powerful weapon, screamed Zeus. All the gods and goddesses muttered, drama queen, that thankfully Zeus didn't hear, or they would be hearing him nag them for hours. Oh Naruto, as he took the bracelets and put them on. Then Annabeth came in with a bowl of some golden liquid. A sip of heaven, sighed the males in the room. Shrugging as it was better than nothing, he took and bite and tasted an all too familiar taste. Could it be, was he right about it after all? It tastes just like cheeseburgers, shouted out Thalia and Thals while grinning at each other. Blue chocolate chip cookies, smiled Percy. Ramen, exclaimed Kushina. Ichiraku's ramen. Ahahaha, I knew it, smiled Kushina. He yelled out with tears, making Annabeth take a step back at his suddenly loud voice that didn't even wake up Percy. Wow, I am surprised that it didn't wake up, Percy, said Thals. Chiron just chuckled nervously. So how do you feel? Chiron asked. Badis, grinned Thals. Like I could fight Zabuza Mamachi, demon of the bloody mist, and come out on top, Naruto said as he got up. He noticed he still had his kunai pouch on and put the horn in it and sealed it all back up, making Annabeth's eyes go wide. Like they did in the throne room along with her mother. What the? She let out. Naruto looked at her oddly before saying, seals very useful. Indeed. Chiron commented with a smirk. Knew even this Chiron knows about seals, wailed Athena. Kushina stopped reading, then grinned and said, I guess I could teach you. Athena with Annabeth and all the other occupants' eyes brightened considerable. Athena and Annabeth shouted out when. Kushina smiled and said, how about after I kick Mr. War God's butt in our fight? They nodded their heads instantly and their eyes brightened even more. The Athena and her daughter thought hopeful she wins quickly so she can teach us. Now I will have a camper show you the cabin for later. I wonder who it is, questioned everyone in the room. Then you come back here. When Percy wakes up I will tell more about this, as I don't want to say this twice. He's is so smart, but with Percy here you have to say things twice or more anyways before he will gets it, joked the demigods. Fair enough. Naruto as he followed him out the door. Annabeth, please continue to watch Percy, please. Oh, they look so cute together, squealed Aphrodite. The others in the room cringed at the love goddess's squeal. Please Kushina read, please, groaned the males in the room. Chiron ordered while the girl nodded, still wondering about those seals. Once outside, Naruto raised an eyebrow. This place was pretty big. He looked around to see that the hill with the pine tree was not far from them. Oh, he knows where his girlfriend is at, sighed Aphrodite. Thals blushed and gave a small smile, but Zeus looked murderous. He felt odd looking at it, like he was being pulled towards it. That's lover my doing, my precious grandson, whispered Aphrodite. The two hunters and Artemis glared at the love goddess. But Aphrodite was too into the book to care or even see them. He shook the feeling off for the moment and looked ahead to see a bunch of cabins in a U-shaped arc. Chiron, not noticing Naruto's small distraction, called out to it. He saw a girl walking by. Clarisse. Come here please. Oh, he is done for, laughed Nico and Percy. Thals just smirked at them and said, you want to bet on it? They did and said, we will give you 10 drachmas. Thals just grinned evilly. That sent shivers down the two boys' backs, but they shook on it to finalize the deal. The girl turned her head and saw Chiron and one of the new guys everyone was talking about. She smirked and walked over. Properly going to be the welcome committee, smiled Percy, thinking about what he did to her when she tried to dunk his head into the toilet. Naruto noticed that she was pretty tall, strong looking, and probably a year or two older than him. Is he checking out? Clarisse said, a shocked Percy Jackson. She was not totally ugly. Oh, my grandson is going to be heartbreaking when he grows up, I am so proud, cried Aphrodite. She looked gruff and had the look of a fighter. Well duh kid, she is my child, sneered Ares. What? Came her response when she arrived. She is straightforward, whispered Kushina, while Falls nodded her head. I would like for you to show Naruto here around the cabins for the moment. I will probably have Annabeth show Naruto and Percy around camp later when the latter wakes up. Chiron stated. Chiron, I don't think that is wise, commented Annabeth. Everyone looked at her strangely. She sighed and said, well, Clarisse is not so polite and one of the meaner children of Ares in camp. The others in the throne room just nodded their heads and now got what the daughter of Athena was saying. Fine, gotta welcome the newbie anyway. She said with an evil smirk. Yeah, fight, encouraged Ares. Naruto raised an eyebrow as that. He knew that smirk, he used it when he did a prank. He guessed that she was welcoming committee. You got it, grumbled Percy. Annabeth whispered, at least she didn't dunk your head in the toilet. Well, come on, brat. She called out, already walking away. He followed her all the way to the middle of the arc of cabins. Okay, listen closely because I am only going to say this once. There are 12 cabins in all. Each one represents a Greek god it was made for. Their kids are the one who live in there. Since you and the runt are new and have not been claimed yet, you two will go to cabin 11, the Hermes cabin. That's cruel for the other gods and goddesses, answered Kushina. The others in the room thought about it and agreed with her. They silently vowed that it would change soon. Naruto nodded. Hermes did shelter a lot of people, so it made sense. And the one you're in? He asked nonchalantly. The god of war's cabin. Oh, cabin 5 go. Screamed an excited Ares. She proclaimed, well, point to a red cabin. I hate that cabin and properly Naruto does too, grumbled Percy. Cool. Naruto replied. No, you corrupted my friend, joked Percy. Artemis glared at him and hissed out, great, another Apollo. The others laughed and Percy just blushed and looked away from the glaring goddess of the moon. Right, now we have the other cabins. We got Demeter, Dionysus, Athena, Apollo, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hera, Zeus, Artemis and Poseidon. She said, pointing to each. He looked at Zeus and Hera's and quirked an eyebrow. They got some pretty fancy cabins for nobody to use. He noticed that a Hades cabin was not there. Yeah, blame your uncles for that, hissed out Hades while glared at his brothers. Poseidon and Zeus looked anywhere but Hades because they were slightly ashamed for isolating Hades's children from camp. Nico wanted to tell his father that there was a Hades's cabin along with the minor gods and goddesses but remained silent. In case that it happened differently in the book's dimension. Odd, since he was part of the big three. He also noticed a big space between Poseidon's and Zeus's cabins. Maybe they planned on making one and forgot since they never got any kids from Hades. Now it is not to officially welcome you. Of course, sighed Percy. Clarisse called out, making a lot of people look toward them and they grimaced. That's my girl, smiled Ares. Does that happen a lot, questioned Athena. The demigods nodded their head and Athena along with the females in the room just growled. Clarisse has changed, said Falls. Percy looked shocked and questioned, what do you mean? Well, never mind, you will see in the book, shuddered Falls. Kushina, please continue, smiled Falls while Kushina smiled, then nodded her head. Clarisse was breaking in another newbie. Even though Naruto helped in killing the Minotaur, they felt sorry for him. As do we, said everyone in the room besides Ares with frowns on their faces. Ares just smiled and thought, that's my girl. She quickly reacted out and tried to grab him by the collar. Keyword here is tried. Way to go, Naruto, said Annabeth and Percy. They blushed and then looked away from each other. While Athena glared at the sea spawn and muttered, stupid sea spawn, stay away from my daughter. She along with everyone else gasped as he grabbed a log of wood. Kushina giggled to herself and thought, yup, just like me. Stumbled, fell to one knee. What the hell? Yup, that sounds like Clarisse to me, Percy nodded his head. Annabeth sighed and said, seaweed brain, that is Clarisse. Percy blushed and said, oh. She screamed in her head. Before she could get up, she felt cold metal against her neck. The throne room was silent until Ares started to scream out, why that no good punk I should. Everyone sighed and looked at Kushina to start reading so they didn't have to listen to Ares's complaining. Kushina smiled and continued because after this chapter she was going to kick Ares's ass. She glanced to the right to see Naruto was facing the other way she was and looked at her from his side and with a smirk on his face, similar to her evil one earlier. He could get mistaken for a child of Ares, said Athena. Kushina looked insulted and shouted, if you think I would fall for Ares, you got another guess coming. The demigods laughed at Kushina's response while Ares started to glare at Kushina. For someone born from war, you have slow reflexes. "Why that punk," sneered Ares. Kushina snarled and hissed out, "That punk has a name, you know, and he is my son." Naruto said, releasing a small bit of killer intent while still smirking. They heard a lot of people asking others how he did that, and to Clarisse of all people. "No one can even dream of do that to Clarisse," Percy envious said. All the demigods just nodded their heads awestruck by what Naruto did. Some noticed that he had his kunai pouch on and that he didn't have that before. "Ninja badass," grinned Hermes. Deciding to scare them, he withdrew his kunai from her neck, put it in his pouch, sealed it away, earning a few gasps of shock as it just disappeared. "But that he could be one of the most popular boys at camp," said Annabeth. Percy looked at Annabeth questionable but shook his head and thought girls are too complicated. He shocked them even more as he stepped back and offered a hand to help Clarisse up. "Oh, such a gentleman, I will definitely screw up his love life because that's what a good grandma does," smiled Aphrodite. Everyone in the room just looked at Aphrodite confused. They were all wondering how in Tartarus name did she come to that conclusion. While that was happening, Clarisse was in deep shock. "The hell, I have never been bested like that." "No, you have not, because Naruto is a ninja in both cases of being a badass and an actual ninja," giggled Falls. She then noticed the hand and quickly took it. She nodded her head and they walked back to the big house where Naruto came out of. Along the way, she was thinking deeply. "Don't strain yourself," joked Percy. Annabeth whacked him on the head because she said he is being an idiot. Artemis smiled at the daughter of Athena and wondered if she would be interested in joining the hunt. But filed it for later. She looked at the couple again, then came to the realization that they were properly together. She then sighed and muttered, "Aphrodite will have a heyday for this. He could be an Ares kid. But he isn't and never will be," snarled Kushina. "If he is not, I am not sure what else he could be. He beat me and could have killed me with me knowing it. What is this odd-ass feeling?" "Love's in the air," smiled Aphrodite. Percy shuddered. "That can't be Clarisse, can it?" Ares glared at the son of Poseidon, but before he could say anything, Kushina continued on. Arriving at the big house, Chiron saw that Naruto looked bored and Clarisse looked a little lost. "That is love for you, completely useless," hissed out Artemis. Her two hunters just nodded their heads agreeing with their mistress. Aphrodite looked scandalized, but Artemis paid her no mind. He had a feeling something went wrong with her welcome plan and could see that she was developing a crush for the blonde. "That's exactly it," squealed Aphrodite. "Dods, I feel so sorry for him." "Who knew Chiron could be funny," said Apollo and Hermes. "We do too," said the demigods except Thales and Kushina. At any rate, he was probably going to be hearing what happened from the other campers. "Elementary, my dear Watson, Naruto of course being a badass, so you will be hearing about Naruto quite often, and of course we are reading about him," came Apollo. Artemis looked at her twin with confusion on her face. Apollo then said, "I thought it would sound good." Artemis got up from her throne and started banged her head on the wall while muttering, "Stupid, stupid, stupid." Zoe and Phoebe looked concerned about their mistress's state of mind. "Back already, I see." He started, "Since Percy won't be fully awake until tomorrow, I would like for you to stay near here." "Wow, Percy, you're out like a light," snickered Nico. Percy glared at him and said, "Shut up, D'Angelo." Nico smiled and waved for Kushina to start again. Kushina smiled at her stepson and continued. "Alright then. I am going to take a nap next to the big pine tree." "Stay away from my daughter," thundered Zeus with his master bolt in his hands. Everyone just sighed then muttered, "Drama queen expect for Thales," because she was blushing and shouted, "Daddy." "See you later, Chiron, Clarisse." And before Chiron could say anything, Naruto had ninja jumped up to the tree. "Properly to warn us about Zeus's tantrums about his daughter dating Naruto," sighed Poseidon. "Well, it's too late for that," smirked Hades. "Well, if you ate cereal and didn't steal my precious core, then maybe Zeus wouldn't have freaked out as badly," hissed out Demeter. "Enough woman about cereal," groaned Hades. "No, cereal is nutritious and good for the soul," remarked Demeter. Everyone besides them had popcorn in hand and was watching this like a tennis match. The argument went back and forth for 10 minutes until Zeus shouted enough of his childish behavior. The others in the room whispered out, "Speak for yourself." But likely Zeus didn't hear it, for if he did they would be getting a earful of it. Neither noticed that Clarisse had quickly walked away with a small pink tint to her cheeks. "I love you, my grandson," shouted out Aphrodite. Naruto arrived at the tree and sat down with his back to it. This tree had been pulling at him the whole time. "The power of love," sighed Aphrodite. "Please spare us," sighed Artemis. "Well, I am sorry to rain on your parade, Ms. Ice Queen," snarled Aphrodite. Artemis growled and was about to pounce on the love goddess and rearrange her face. But Kushina started again, so she sat back onto her throne. He idly wondered if it was cursed or something like that. "No, only a prison for little old me," smirked Thales. Slowly falling asleep, he laid his head against the tree and was out. Whenever he slept, he had dreams, but this was the most vivid dream he had ever had. "That's not good," remarked Percy. He was in a large white room and he was not alone. "Oh my shining shoes," squealed Aphrodite. "Not like that, mother," shouted Kushina. "The girl. Are you sure, daughter?" smirked Aphrodite. "Yes," groaned Kushina. But before Aphrodite could speak again, Kushina began reading once more. Stood across from him, staring at him with shocked eyes. "Oh man," screamed Aphrodite. Kushina just smirked but said nothing and continued like she was never inspected. "She has shoulder-length spiky black hair." Some whispers and looks went to Thals. "And blue eyes, with freckles under her eyes." The whispers and looks increased even further. "Mostly on the left, and she is wearing some punk-style clothes." Now everyone was looking at Thals, causing her to blush and look away from them. To him she looked beautiful. Thals blushed deeper and twiddled her fingers or playing with her black hair. Hey. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Who are you and where are we? As I know this can't be a dream." "Oh, this is how you first met, how cute," squealed Aphrodite. Everyone in the room and on Olympus had to cover their ears unless threatened of being deaf. The girl gulped and said, "Thalia, and we are in limbo." "Hey, I'm in the story now," cheered Thals and Thalia. Kushina said, "That's it, now it is time to fight Ares." Ares just grinned and said, "Finally you lose, girly. What if Greek gods read Naruto Konoha?" And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.